Hello, and welcome to Bluestem Earth Festival 2021. I'm your host and committee co-chair, Megan Butel. We are thrilled to be with you all today and have a great collection of speakers and videos to show. Before we jump in, just a quick overview of Bluestem for those who are new to the festival. Bluestem Earth Festival is presented by the Joliet Franciscan Sisters and Associates and is typically hosted at the University of St. Francis. The goal of Bluestem is to empower individuals and families to live more sustainable, socially responsible lifestyles. Today, Bluestem speakers will be discussing topics on sustainability, health and wellness, as well as nature and garden. Please feel free to ask questions or use the chat throughout the event. Speakers will try to answer some questions at the close of their talk. While we are streaming, feel free to participate in our virtual raffle going on. Yes, it's still live and it will be closing at noon. Visit the link below, go.rallyup.com/Bluestem to purchase tickets while there's still time. We have a great collection of items this year from local community businesses, ranging from rain barrels to butterfly-friendly plant collections to a private wine tour and tasting. So let's begin. Our first speaker today is Terry Gallagher. Terry uses his rather unusual breadth of experience as an engineer, a manager of hazardous chemical plants, a pastor of local churches, and his work as a public theologian to engage people in responding to the climate crisis. His presentations, writings, and workshops are a combination of his skills as a storyteller of real-life experiences, faith journey reflections, a bit of science and technology, some positive actions that you can implement into your daily life, and an exploration of just what is God calling people of faith to do in response to the greatest crisis human civilization has ever encountered. This presentation is brought to you by Jim Dunn. Welcome, Terry.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's great to be with you. I don't know about you guys, but the last year and a half have been a bummer for me. They really have. I haven't been in front of an audience in person, which is what I much prefer to do since I am, I'm known for preaching and telling stories, so that's much better than person. But this works. I especially appreciated that was the best sounding elevator music I've ever heard leading into this. So that's good. I appreciate that. Okay. So the last year and a half, if you've been at all like I have, and you've been taking this COVID serious, you've been isolated, and we're now just kind of coming out of the cocoon, right? We're finally being able to spread our wings a little bit and go back maybe a little bit into normal life. And so this is a good time to engage on this subject. Before I forget, normally I take 8 hours to do this, so obviously I'm not going to cover it today. We're just going to do snippets. But before I forget, I want to refer you to my website. On my website, sustainingcreation.org, you'll find a whole bunch of different resources that are available and free for your use. But especially wanted to point out the Seeds of Hope video series. So if you're ever wondering if we have the technology to handle this crisis, there's 40 videos in them, very short, 40 videos, very short, each one, that give you a solution on how it's working. But what I want to talk about today are my 48 steps to a sustainable life. 48 steps, yeah, 48 steps. You don't got to do them. Don't worry about it. You don't got to do them. But you'll find that they're categorized into different areas. They're under lifestyle, transportation, energy, community, sharing the message. The greatest truths throughout human history have always been most effectively conveyed to somebody else in the way of stories. So let me tell you a story. As she was describing, I have this really strange, wide background, right? A dozen years ago or more, I went on a series of immersion experiences around the globe to listen to voices that I don't normally get to listen to see people of diverse cultures and experiences so that I might gain a little wisdom from them. And so I went to Palestine to be among the people, just like this week, that live among the daily threat of life-ending violence. And I went to Mexico to right on the border so I could experience what's it mean to live in a border town under our NAFTA treaties and all the poverty and environmental degradation that comes from that. I've been to Honduras to look at the climate crisis causing the migration, the mass migration to our southern border. A lot of that is rooted in environmental justice. But I want to tell you one story specifically from my experience in Colombia. I went down to Colombia as a member of the Christian Peacemakers team. We were called into a village up in the Andes Mountains. It was a mining village. And really, what I mean by mining, I mean mining like we did back in the 1860s, right? So it was mostly by hand and by mule. But like we mined back in the 1860s, and even like we mine now, there was a lot of environmental impact from it. Anyway, they had invited us to be there so that we would be in between the villagers and the Colombian army, which had set up in the jungle right outside the village. And they had hoped by having an international presence, then the army would stay right where it was at and not invade the village and take it over. Because in the history of Colombia, which doesn't have very good land records, if a land's unoccupied, then it's available. And in the Colombian history, they've had whole villages moved out, sometimes by our use of American paramilitaries. So the land was vacant and a corporation could take it over. And so this mining village were worried about that very thing because they were an artisan gold mining village. They mined gold dust. And there was a large global firm that wanted to take that over. And so they were afraid that the army was there to move them out so this great, big corporation could take it over. And so as part of our experience, they gave us a tour of just how they went about mining this gold dust. And my colleagues were absolutely fascinated by how hard they worked, how ingenious they worked with the limited technology that they had. And essentially, they dig out huge mounds of dirt by hand, and then you grind it with mercury because there's an alchemic reaction between the mercury and gold dust that attracts the gold dust out of the dirt. And then, of course, you have to wash it to get rid of the dirt. And then you have to take what residual there is, and you put it in a little blast furnace, and you burn off the rest of the residuals. And you wind up, after you do that, with a little disc of gold. So my colleagues were absolutely fascinated by it, but I have to tell you, I was horrified because I'm a chemical plant manager. I'm a hazardous chemical expert. I've gone out on train wrecks to handle hazardous chemical exposures to communities. And what I saw was them poisoning themselves, the land forever, and ruining the brains of their children by all the mercury they were releasing into the air, into the soil, into the water. But I was there as a visitor. I was there to listen. So I said, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. And so the next day, we went out to meet with the Colombian army in the jungle. Now, first confession, I don't speak Spanish. In fact, I don't speak any foreign languages worth anything. Right? And so they assigned me the task of watching the army snipers in the jungle in camouflage, and warn the group if they were getting ready to shoot. Now, what good that would do, I don't know, but they needed to give me a job, and this was to give me. And so the leaders who were fluent in Spanish spoke to the army colonel and explained the villagers' concern and what the reason we were there for, and then listened to what the army colonel had to say. And so we went back to the village council, and we met with them so that the village council could hear what did the army respond to. And I'm listening to my leaders who are there that are fluent in Spanish speak and explain all that had gone on, and I'm telling myself, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to be quiet, I'm not going to say anything. And as I listened, I just can't. I got to talk. I can't let this go by. And so I asked for an interpreter to speak the words I wanted to say. And I start out by apologizing because I was probably going to insult them or at least hurt them. But I had to tell them that what I see as a hazardous chemical expert is that what they were doing was destroying that land forever, destroying their health. And mercury, the heavy metal mercury, was poisoning the minds of their children. And they needed to find another way. I have to tell you, when I sat down, there was absolute quiet. It seemed like it was forever, but it was really only a minute. And so I turned to one of the pastors that was with me, that was fluent in Spanish. I said, could you offer a word of prayer because I've hurt them? And he said, no, wait. They're processing. And the village president got up. He said, you know what? What that pastor says is the truth that we already know. We just refuse to talk about it. The truth that we already know. We just refuse to talk about it. So the next day, they called a meeting of the entire village in the only building that was big enough to hold everybody, which was the pool hall. And they asked me to speak again. So there I was, a stranger in the midst, willing to speak the terrible truth of what they were doing so that it would be out in the public, so that they would hear the words and have to confront them. Now, I come away from that experience with two conclusions. The first conclusion is the problem of destroying the world is not this little village in the Andes. No, the problem of destroying the world is my generation in my society that consumes 35 times what any other society does. And so that launched my ministry of sustaining creation. I went back and I got my doctorate so I would have ethical groundings for what I was to do. But it led me on a path, and you'll see all the resources sustaining creation that we developed so that others might hear it. The other truth is, I really, really doubt that I changed anybody's behavior there. Maybe some of the other team members that were with me, well, maybe some of the people who were blast furnacing the mercury at least wore a respirator after I mentioned wear a respirator or wore rubber gloves. But they certainly didn't stop harvesting gold. And gold mining in South America, Central America, and other places in the world is a leading source of mercury pollution. That's still going on. But what changed is me. And by changing my behavior in the 12 years subsequent, I've exposed that new behavior to other people. And I've done what I call sowing seeds. And so that's really the name of the video series. It's Sowing Seeds of Climate Hope. So that's what I want to talk about today. All too often we argue about what is the right belief, the right knowledge, the right understanding, and we neglect right behavior. So we concentrate on orthodox and we neglect orthopraxis. And so the reason I put together 48 steps, 48 steps, is so that individuals who are so inclined could try some of those. But the most important thing that you can do is do it visibly so that somebody else might see what you're doing and wonder, is it that important to somebody that I trust that they're willing to change their lives? Is it that important that I should do it too? And then you start sowing seeds and you cast it down. There's 48 different steps. Some of them are very, very easy. You're going to look at that list on my website, or the event providers can share that list with you. And you're going to look at the list, you're going to see some of them, you're going to say, oh, that is so easy. I don't know even why he typed that out, because I've been doing that forever. And you're going to look at some others, And you're going to say, you know what, Gallagher? You're nuts. You're absolutely nuts if you think I'm going to do that. But in between the, oh, this is so easy, and oh, you're nuts, there are some things that you could consider doing. But the key point is to do them visibly. Don't preach. Be the gospel by the way you walk, by the way you live, by the way you embrace God's good creation rather than consume it. So 48 different steps. They range from, well, changing our dietary habits, to changing our transportation habits, to changing what we talk about when we gather in groups, to changing how we interact with legislators so they might hear our voices and not just the people who are believing in alternative facts. So that's something to think about. Is there something that I could do in my life off that list, or something I'm already doing that if I made it visible, would it inspire somebody else to walk that path too? I have to tell you up front, forget about changing Uncle Joe at the Thanksgiving table. That ain't gonna happen. That ain't gonna happen. But you may well change someone or inspire them to dig a little bit deeper so that they might inspire somebody else. Now, there's a parable of the seer, the sower of seeds, that the gospel always talks about. And it talks about a sower goes out into the fields and he sows seeds, and some fall in among the thorns and then it gets swallowed and choked out by the thorns. And some falls on a hard path and the sun just bakes it and they never get a chance to root. Some fall where the birds grab and eat it and there's no chance. But some fall where the ground is just fertile enough that with God's gift of rain and sun, they bloom. That's what we do when we work on these steps, and we do it visibly. And when somebody asks you why you do that, don't try to convince them that they're right. Do it from a standpoint of why you do that, why it's important to you that you change a life away from consuming creation to protecting creation. Little bits, little seeds. You never know where the harvest is going to bound up. I can tell you now, 12 years into this, I still get coming out of left field from places I thought I had zero effect. Somebody will ask a question or request a resource or ask me to do a presentation like this. So if we can expand who is willing to live by example, then we can expand who is going to hear and see and contemplate, should I be doing that? What changes a path is not the best sermon in the world, although as a preacher I'd love to think it was that. What changes a path is when somebody I know that I already trust gives me a new truth to consider that I do not yet accept. But because I trust them, because I have a relationship with them, I'm willing to consider. Because otherwise, if it's a stranger and it's somebody preaching to you, the shutters just go up, or the defense shields go up, and there's no chance. That's like talking to Uncle Joe at the Thanksgiving table. Ain't gonna happen. Just enjoy your turkey. Let it go. If somebody asks, how come you took up gardening? It's so much easier to go to the grocery store. You say, well, it's healthier. At least for me, and I'm concerned about my family, so I do it. Or if somebody says, why do you take public transportation? You say, well, you know, I'd kind of like to cut down on the pollution that my kids have to breathe, or whatever works for you. 48 steps. Don't try to do them all. I don't do them all. Right? But see if it doesn't work for you. Right? I could go on for 8 hours. I'm not going to do that. So if you got questions, let's shoot them. Okay? Any questions?
So if you're watching on Facebook, please write them in the chat. Sister Peggy says, can't wait to look at Terry's website. So she's going to check that out. Spreading some of those little seeds of thought. Yes, the website is on screen. It is sustainingcreation.org.
How was my time in Palestine? It was stunning, actually, because I met people of peace on both sides of that conflict. And so that by listening, you realize that God's good creation transfers all over the boundaries that we artificially set up between us. Okay. So don't be afraid to listen. Well, if you were going to offer one suggestion, just one to start with, what would you do? Okay, skip doing the surveys that come across your thing and just send a personal note to your congressman that says you're a voter and you care about the future for your kids. Okay? What would you start living a more sustainable life? I started with diet. Obviously not the quantity I eat because I eat way too much, but I started with breaking my old habit of eating red meat. Now, I'm not a vegan, all right? Someday when I grow up, I want to be a vegetarian, but I'm not there yet. I'm still a carnivore, okay? All right, so, but you do what you can do, right? And don't blame yourself for not being able to do everything, all right? Even Mother Teresa couldn't do everything, all right? So don't quote yourself there. Do what gives you hope. Do what gives you an inspiration to continue on. This is not a race. This is a long journey, right? But right now, there's lots of positive things that are happening that we ought to be excited about. We're finally back in the global activities on this. Yeah. How do I refocus when I trip up? Part of it is having somebody who gives you honest feedback, you know? And so the person that gives me honest feedback, no matter what, is my wife. So she stirs me back on the straight and narrow when I fall off it. And sometimes all it takes is raising an eyebrow, right? So, but on the back of my 48 steps, I also list a bunch of references that you might want to check out, people you might want to follow, educational resources you might want to tap into, and some of those give me hope. But the biggest thing as an engineer is that we've got the technology. So don't let anybody ever tell you that we can't do this because it's not physically possible. We've got that technology. What we're lacking is human behavior. But right now we're making big beats. You saw the president drove off in an electric pickup truck and said, this sucker is fast. That's changing the culture. Yeah.
All right, Terry. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Again, for more information and resources, visit Terry's nonprofit ministry website, sustainingcreation.org, or his Sustaining Creation Facebook page. Thanks again, Terry.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Next, we have a word from the Sisters of St. Francis of Mary Immaculate.
Hello, a word from the Sisters of St. Francis and their associates and partners. Our word today is about the connection between the sustainable lifestyle and social justice. Sustainable living is a global issue that affects the survival of our planet and all peoples. Let me give you a few examples. One, disadvantaged communities live and often work in some of the most polluted environments, like near landfills, near chemical plants, near bus stations. 3 out of 5 Black and Latino Americans live in communities with uncontrolled toxic waste. Refugees and persons displaced due to natural disasters, civil wars, job shortages are in danger of increased risk for human trafficking. Floods, hurricanes, and heat waves, blizzards, and tornadoes find the poor with little economic power to escape or rebuild or survive. The COVID pandemic shows us clearly the work that needs to be done in terms of equity and social justice. We have seen that COVID and its aftermath has affected low income and people of color disproportionately. I've listed some here of the ways that that's happening, and I'm sure you can add to that list. We recognize that sustainable living is about looking at how we might live and how our choices in society need to consider the quality of life for myself, for all people, and for the next generations. The present methods we use often cause suffering, affecting low-income families, disenfranchised people, people of color, the disabled, in disproportionate ways. We as Joliet Franciscans and our associates have 4 corporate stances. I'd like to use these 4 topics and look at one dimension of the issue and give an idea of something we can do differently to make a difference. In the stance of nuclear disarmament, the issue I'm drawing attention to is nuclear testing and waste. The environmental question is the dangerous effects on people, plants, and animals in the vicinity. And what is an idea for us that we can do? What can we do? I might ask for us, what is my own energy consumption that drives the market and uses scarce resources? What is my carbon footprint? There are websites that can figure that out for us. I invite you to consider trying that out. Secondly, reverence for earth and all peoples. The issue I chose is waste. Where does the waste of the world go? How much do we waste? How often do I purchase single-use items that end up in the garbage? When I stop to think of those things, it really blows my mind. The idea I offer is to cut my own use of plastic in half in 3 months. Measure my own use over 1 month and see what I can do to cut that in half over the next 2 months. The third corporate stance is about human trafficking, the business of using men, women, and children as a commodity. Our economic system is unsustainable, leaving some vulnerable to this abuse. We cannot sustain the extreme demand of resources, including people, and expect to have a healthy planet for years to come. So what might we do? How are the products or the businesses I use using resources and achieving their low costs? The idea for me is to develop further my conscious shopping habits. We might use the Better World Shopping Guide as an example. This is the app here on the slide, in order to look at companies' ratings on justice issues. The fourth corporate stance is racism. Racism defined as prejudice plus misuse of power. Racial prejudice being a negative attitude toward a person or group, usually based on stereotype without knowledge of a group or experience. I give you 4 examples that have been in the news, and I know you can mention more of these. One is Flint, Michigan, and the water contamination. The second is the New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina and the rebuilding inequity that we saw over the years, still not rebuilt in many places. The third, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah, and the Navajo Nation, their experience of uranium mining and toxic waste. And a new one I've read and heard recently is in the Bronx, New York, toxic industrial site location and waste management, where those management companies are built. I saw that recently, and that they are struggling to see that those kind of places aren't built in their neighborhoods. So what might we do? One, speak directly and honestly when we observe racism in land use or environmental policies, in our cities or our nation. Learn about all we can about racism through workshops, books, movies, dialogues. I spoke of a few examples, a few issues where social justice and sustainable living overlap, but it is all pervasive. I leave you with the lyrics of a song written by folk singer Pete Seeger in 2008. He was 89 years old, and he wrote it for Berkeley, who has a zero waste commission, and this song was for them. And I think the words can guide sustainable living choices. If it can't be reduced, reused, repaired, rebuilt, refurbished, refinished, resold, recycled, or composted, then it should be restricted, redesigned, or removed from production. Quite a challenge. Let us choose reverence for all creation. Thank you.
Wow, I'm going to definitely need to check out my carbon footprint. Thank you so much, Sister Peggy, for those fascinating social justice facts and statistics. Our next speaker is Amy Phillips. Amy is the Youth Programs Manager for the Conservation Foundation. After working as an architect and sustainability consultant for many years, she made a leap to lend her talents towards nature interpretation and education, leveraging her background in design and sustainability towards inspiring the next generation. In addition to a master's degrees in architecture and business administration, she holds a Master of Science in biomimicry, an interpretive STEAM field that educates and inspires designers to rethink the decisions they make by learning from nature. She is an NAI certified interpretive guide, network co-leader at Biomimicry Chicago, former board chair of USGBC Illinois, now Urban Green Alliance, and a recipient of their Green Mind Award for educational advocacy. Amy is honored to collaborate with some of the best environmental educators in our area and looks forward to growing the educational offerings at the McDonald Farm and throughout the Chicago region. This presentation is brought to you by the City of Joliet. Hi, how are you today, Amy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Pretty good. All right, I give you the stage.
All right, after that very formal bio, I have some slides to share. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to try to do this as quickly as possible. So as always, I have a ton to share, and I'm never enough time, right? So again, thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Amy. I work at the Conservation Foundation in Naperville, and I want to share with you one thing that you can do to make the world a better place by beautifying your yard. And this is one of my favorite types of gardens. It's called a butterfly garden, and it is you plant native plants that attract native animals and insects, and then you get to have beautiful spaces that also help make the world a better place, even in a very small scale. So again, I'm with the Conservation Foundation. We like to say that we save land, we save rivers, and we grow healthy. So everything from conserving and making open lands, open spaces better and more environmentally friendly, to doing river cleanups and making rivers and land better, and also we grow healthy. We also have a working organic farm. So why do we want to talk about native plants? So the reason why we want to, whenever we're trying to attract native butterflies, bees, birds, those are animals that have been around here for a long time, and they know what they like to eat. They like to eat certain kinds of plants. And so if we plant these native plants, they're going to attract these native birds, butterflies, bees, and it would all contribute to the life cycle. We also have, the other great thing about planting these natives is it actually saves money over the long run. It can save 50 to 60% over having lawn. So not only do you have a really beautiful space, but it also is going to cost you less money in the long run. And you can see in this chart, there's differences between the roots. These roots are actually kind of the key for our native plants, because if you've got an area of your yard that is always wet, well, there's a plant for that. You can put a plant that really likes wet conditions, and that area won't be wet. If you've got really bad soil, these plants are really great at improving the soil and loosening up this clay, filtering and absorbing water. These are really great solutions to solve some of the challenges that you have in your spaces. And, and we make these landscapes functional. Look at the difference in compare and contrast the grass and trees on the left versus these vibrant colors on the right. Which one do you think is going to absorb more water? Which one do you think it looks better? Which one do you think is going to help improve that soil? Which one do you think is going to bring and attract all of these wonderful animals that we share this space with? It's the one on the right. And sometimes people are like, well, I'm really worried about planting a lot of flowers because what about the bees, right? But remember, these are native plants that are going to attract the native bees. And these native bees are not honeybees. Honeybees are from Europe and they work in colonies. Native bees are actually solitary and they are ground nesting. And they have a different kind of stinger. And so it's kind of like a fish hook. So if it stings you, that's the only time you're going to get, it's going to die after that. So these are the kind of bees that they really want to leave you alone. They do not want to bother you, so you shouldn't have to worry about them. And then other times people are worried about yellow jackets. Well, wasps and yellow jackets, they're carnivores. They're omnivores. They eat both. They will eat some of the nectar, but they're not really attracted to native gardens. They actually are attracted more to garbage cans and salts and things like that. So you don't have to worry about them either. So one of the things that I think maybe the one that everybody likes the most, maybe, or they're really excited about, are these monarch butterflies. But all butterflies go through this kind of stage of their little bitty eggs, then their caterpillars, and then they form this chrysalis and actually completely dissolve and reform in the form of a butterfly. And it's really, really amazing how they do that. And there are certain plants that they like to go on. So what is the different parts of a butterfly garden? Well, you want to start to think, like, if I'm going to start to make a butterfly garden, what would I need to have in that garden? And you really need to kind of put yourself in the head of a butterfly. What would I want? Well, they want what every animal wants. They want food and water and shelter. So there are different kinds of plants that are what they call host plants, but that's where the eggs are laid and that's what the caterpillars eat. Then there's also nectar plants. Those are the beautiful flowers with the nectar that's what they feed. The butterflies feed once they emerge. There's other things like, so for water, there's it's a thing called a puddler. So you can kind of look up what a puddler is, but it sort of looks like a bird bath that's got some rocks and some sand that will collect the rainwater, but it's safely, so they can kind of land on that sand and not be worried about, getting too much water or drowning. Also dark rocks, these animals need to find ways to get warm. So the dark rocks will absorb the sun and that'll help warm the animal in the morning. So as I said, there are some animals that love certain kinds of plants. So monarchs love milkweed. So if you've ever seen milkweed, these are 4 different kinds of milkweed. Some are really tall, some are really small, some are different colors. So look at milkweed and try to see where you could fit that in your garden. There's other kinds of butterflies like the pearl crescents. They love asters, and there's like little daisy kind of flowers, many, many different versions of asters. Moths, and actually sometimes we can't tell the difference between some of these butterflies and moths because they're just as vibrant and just as beautiful and actually make up about 90% of that butterfly/moth family. So what are some of the plants? If you want to start your own garden and you don't know where to start, I would actually start with these 5 families. These are going to be the ones that are going to attract, that about 75% of insects in this area actually all will eat these plants. So your milkweeds, your asters that I just mentioned, oak trees. Oak trees can support hundreds of species. Just one tree could support hundreds of different kinds of species. Goldenrod, black-eyed Susan. Some of you might be worried, oh, well, maybe I have a brown thumb. I'm here to tell you that black-eyed Susan, you really can neglect it, and it is the most hardy, resilient plant, and it will look beautiful all summer long. And even if you don't want to necessarily start a brand new garden, but you might have a plant that you want to try to swap something new, well, maybe try to think about some of these. And I will tell you, out of all 6 of these, I have 5 of these in my Conservation at Home certified yard. So the spice bush, the cardinal flower, the blazing star, the coreopsis, the butterfly weed. The butterfly weed is beautiful. All of these plants are wonderful, and you can look them up. So we have a program at the Conservation Foundation. We have a program called Conservation at Home. So what we do is we try to help people start butterfly gardens or turn their yards over to be more native plants. And there's a lot of different design solutions. These are two of the ones that you can see a lot. You have the native, but it still looks like a landscaped garden. And then you've got some that are just wild and free and amazing and attract all sorts of different kind of animals. So really, the sky is the limit as far as what you can do. If you are interested in learning more about this Conservation at Home program, you can contact Jamie. This is her email right there, the J. Vbach. She's going to be the person that she would direct you. There's a bunch of different names down below, and I can, of course, share those. But I would say talk to Jamie first of all, and she'll direct you where you need to go. I have a Conservation at Home certified yard. It was a great process learning which plants to use and where to put them, and which ones like sun, which ones like wet, and what kind of plants or what kind of insects and birds it's going to attract. So it's a really fun process to go through, and in the end, you have a beautiful space. So, and if you're also in the Naperville area, or actually in the Montgomery area, we have two different locations, the McDonald Farm, as well as the Dixonhurst. All sorts of youth programs, obviously near and dear to my heart at the McDonald Farm, including camps and scout outings and everything like that. We also have plant sales and rain barrel sales. So you have my information, and this is how to follow us on social media. So go ahead and give us a call, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. And I will stop sharing.
Actually, if you want to do a request to share again, Amy, I don't think you were in it. You were not in a share screen, so we weren't seeing what was on screen for you. So if you want to share the contact information one more time for our viewers, it should give me access to flip it on here.
Oh, no, you didn't get to see all my pretty pictures. It says share. I thought... Oh, I did it all wrong. I am so sorry.
No problem.
Oh, that's so sad.
Okay, perfect. I will share some information here with you right now.
This is my contact information, and I can go back and I can show some really pretty pictures too. Do we have any time? I can kind of just scroll through the pictures while people are asking questions.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have time for some questions, and if you want to scroll through some of the photos.
So this was Jamie's address. This is the woman that I had talked about, that she would be the one if you're interested in doing Conservation at Home or a Conservation at Home program, the J. Vibach at conservationfoundation.org. So this is the native but neat and the wild and free. Oh, these were some of the different plants that you could swap out. Is there any questions that I can answer while I'm scrolling through these? Oh, this actually, let's stay on this one for a little bit, because I think this is if they want to start a butterfly garden, like this is kind of the components that you would put in. So I'll keep this one up for a little bit if anybody has any questions.
We have one question. What struggles do you find with a butterfly garden? Are there predators for butterflies that are attracted to it as well, etc.?
Well, I mean, the birds are going to be the predators for the butterflies, right? So, but it's not something, I'd say my struggles are more just the struggles that I would have for any garden, just trying to get that established. The great thing about native plants is once they're established, let me scroll up a little bit. I'll show you this one. This was what I was talking about with the really, really deep roots. Because once these plants are established, you can neglect them and they don't care, because they're used to really bad soils and they're used to drought. So all of these plants, but you have to kind of take care of them for the first couple of years. And then once they're established, you can pretty much let it go. The main thing that I have to do now that mine is established is I have to pull some of the times when they drop their seeds, and I have a little bit more of the, neat and orderly type of garden. I don't have the wild and free garden. So sometimes, they really like to be there, and one will all of a sudden take root and start jumping up and being in a space I don't want it to be in. So, I kind of pull and just try to maintain that kind of aesthetic, but you don't have to do that. You can keep them going. But, as far as predators go, no, it's not. I mean, you do attract all of the wildlife to your garden, right? But I also have chickens. So, I'm sort of used to this. But yeah, I mean, they will, everything is going to come to you. You're going to have, the birds that are going to come and try to eat the larva. But that's kind of great. I love hearing the bird song. I love seeing all of that.
We have one other question. I bought a butterfly house at a vendor fair last year. Are those any good or not so good?
When you mean butterfly house, you mean like the little nets that to try to raise the butterflies? If that's what, I'm not sure. A butterfly house. I would assume it's some sort of netted enclosure. The main thing, if you're trying to, some people try to raise monarchs, and that is, there's what you can do. You have to a little bit look out for disease and things like that. But what they do is they go and they grab the caterpillars from the milkweed in their yard, bring them inside, or put them inside. Maybe sometimes it's still outside, but it's within a netted enclosure. There's different schools of thought on all of that. I mean, the odds that when you put them in a netted enclosure, the larvae, they're not going to die of predation, right? The birds aren't going to come and eat them. But, you have to be very careful about sanitation to make sure that you don't get certain kind of diseases and things like that. It's better if you grab them as eggs, because there's a certain kind of wasp that'll sting them and then they get diseased. So it's better if you're going to do that you go and you look at your milkweed and you look for the eggs on the bottom of the milkweed, because they grow on the bottom of the leaf, or they're laid on the bottom of the leaf. So look for the eggs and bring the eggs in, as opposed to bringing in the larva. That's a better plan to do. So let me scroll back to the end and I'll put my contact information up one more time. Is there any other questions?
Any last questions? This is all fascinating. Do you do the native plants? How often do you find that you have to split them or relocate, things like that?
It's I haven't had to do it. My garden, my native garden is about 3 years old, but then I have a different native garden that's probably about 10 years old, and I've never split them. I think it really depends on the plant. Again, the most thing that I have to do, it comes down to aesthetics. You don't have to split them. If you have, like, for example, the black-eyed Susans, they will love to grow anywhere. They will grow. I'm convinced they grow in like no soil. That was terrible soil. So the thing with the black-eyed Susan, but I happen to love them, so I kind of let them take over wherever they want to take over. But I have an nodding wild onion, and that one, it's an onion. So but it has a lot of seeds, and so I had planted some ground cover right next to it. So there's a lot of pulling the little seeds out. So, but again, that's because I have that more cultivated look. Not everybody likes that cultivated look. That's just a personal aesthetic. But the benefits are the plants and the insects and the butterflies and the birds, they're going to come no matter what it looks like. It really just comes down to personal preference, and also, what kind of and soil. So if you've got a very wet soil, you're going to want to choose the wet plants. If you've got a dry soil, you're going to try to choose the dry plants.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for joining us today. All of that butterfly information is amazing, and I hope some of our viewers can start using some more native plants and get some butterflies in their own yards. So thank you again.
Sorry about the screen share problem.
Oh, no, you're fine.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye.
I just love all the beautiful flowers that it can grow in a butterfly garden. Thank you so much, Amy. Now we have a word from Will County Green.
Hello, and thank you for attending Bluestem. This is Marta Keene, and I'm with Will County. I'm here to talk to you today about how you can improve the environment and save money while doing it by embracing energy efficiency and also recycling. The first thing about energy you should know is that the electricity that comes to us from various power sources comes to us through the grid system that ComEd has been upgrading and installing smart meters on. A smart meter is a digital electric meter that collects energy usage and sends that information to the utility. It eliminates estimated billing and allows real-time pricing. So there's a program called hourly pricing that we highly recommend if you have any ability to control your electric use. Electric rates are very low at night. So if you run your dishwasher, your clothes washer, or if you have a plug-in vehicle and you plug that in at night, you're going to have a lower rate of electricity, even if you're using the same amount, than if you plugged it in during the day. So it's something to consider. There are a variety of programs with ComEd and with NICOR, including a free home assessment where they will give you energy efficiency products and they'll make recommendations for you just so you can save energy. Switching to a programmable thermostat, switching to LED lights, replacing your old appliances with Energy Star appliances, using advanced power strips, installing shower heads and faucet aerators that are going to use less water. And that actually uses less electricity as well. So you're not pumping as much water. You can insulate your attic around your windows, the outside electric sockets, and your hot water. Don't forget about that. If you have to replace the hot water heater, make sure that you consider getting a tankless. And even if you don't, set the temperature at 120. That's what the Department of Energy recommends, and it's going to save you electricity. As CDAC actually offers free assessments for businesses. So if you're a business listening today, please contact them at the website Smart Energy Illinois. Also consider reusing whenever possible. It's one of the R's that gets forgotten, and there's more opportunities now than ever before. You're joining us on Facebook. Use Facebook Marketplace to buy used items, garage sales, thrift stores. Borrow or rent things instead of buying them, but whenever you do borrow, make sure you return it in very good condition. Share items with friends and family when possible, and in your yard, leave the grass clippings laying there. They will actually insulate the lawn in times of drought, and they're actually a nitrogen source, which is a fertilizer. If you do need to rake them up or you have other materials, start a compost, use the finished material as mulch or fertilizer. That'll also give you a chance to get rid of those veggie scraps. And support composting processors. Make sure instead of getting sod for a bare spot in your yard, you actually buy some compost and throw some seeds in it. It's going to grow great. And thinking about the way that we look as a society at items that are new, we're always bragging about the things that we get when they're brand new. We should be bragging about the things that we get that have lasted a long time. Okay, think about vintage clothes. Think about using a purse that's gotten refinished. A shoe repair shop will actually refinish a leather purse. Okay, everybody likes to talk about their grandmother's ring. Why aren't we doing that with everything? Think about trunks, or think about silverware sets, things like that, that our grandparents and parents may have that they're no longer using that we would want to show off. And also stop using disposables. I know during COVID, that was the thing we had to use, but they're coming back with reusable cups. So please make sure that you're using those whenever possible. On recycling itself, we do need to be aware that we should not contaminate the recycling. There's a lot of items that can be recycled, but not everything can go in the curbside programs. So please understand that we are no longer taking some of the items that we used to take because they were never being recycled in the first place. And the contamination rate for bales being sent for manufacturers to turn into new products is set at 0.5% in a 2,000-pound bale. That's very little that can be that cannot be there, that's not supposed to. So Plastic bags are the absolute most common item that people throw in there. Even if they're not throwing plastic bags in, they might put their recyclables in a plastic bag. We've got to stop doing that. This picture shows what happens at the sorting facilities when lots of plastic bags get caught up in the gears, and it can take 5 or 6 shutdowns each day to clear these bags by hand. Also, scrap metals, electronics, food can be an issue, especially in plastic containers. Use a dirty napkin, wipe them out. Okay, and please be aware that sometimes you're told different messages and they're not always accurate. K-Cups was telling everybody that they're recyclable because their items were recycled in a lab. There is not a single material recovery facility in the United States that is able to take a separate line and process K-Cups. So check with your cities, check with the county, willcountygreen.com. We have all the most up-to-date information on recycling. And there are a number of items that every curbside program in the state of Illinois is taking. And we've participated in a contamination task force identifying these. They're on our website, willcountygreen.com. They're also on the state EPA's website. Okay, and so just keep in mind, you can do a lot of your bottles, tubs, and jugs with plastics, your glass, your aluminum, your steel, and your paper, right? Just try to stick with those things, and then the specialty items bring to special drop-offs. So the last thing I want to tell you is to avoid overpackaged items. Reach manufacturers and tell them, call those 800 numbers, write your newspaper, tell your legislators you want to make sure that you have less packaging and the packaging you have is recyclable or compostable, right? And last thing that I'll remind everybody is you can put the caps back on those plastic bottles when you recycle them. We used to tell people they couldn't do that, and it's been about 10 years now, and we still get a lot of folks who don't realize they can put those caps back on. So thank you so much for being here today. Enjoy the rest of the festival and be a great recycler.
Wow, what simple yet significant ways to live a more sustainable green lifestyle. Thank you so much, Marta. Up next, we want to welcome Gary Cheney. He's having some troubleshooting issues at the moment. So in the meantime, we're going to bring live Rita Travis to talk with us a little bit about Bluestem and some of the Bluestem efforts. Hi, Rita.
Oh, hi, Megan. I'm really enjoying the program so far. But Bluestem has a wonderful history. We started probably thinking about it and talking about it in probably 2012 with the Sisters of St. Francis and the Associates on their Peace Justice Commission. And our first festival was actually, it's hard to believe, in 2014. And we had 46 vendors and a couple hundred people come through. And when we had our last one in 2019, no matter what the weather was, we always had 1,000 to 2,000 people coming through and hundreds of vendors and exhibitors with just lots of good information and lots of wonderful products to share with us. So
definitely grown over the years. It's been amazing. So
yeah, I think I was laughing this morning because in years past, we've always looked at the weather and, you know, with quivering, is it going to rain that day? And we've had some lovely days for our in-person Bluestem and some not so lovely days. And I remember a wind came up and almost blew Sister Dolores away one day. She was trying to hold down our welcome tent. So I was thinking we don't have to worry about the weather today.
Absolutely. Well, it looks like Gary is on, so we will check back in with you, Rita, later if we need some other something to chat about. All right. Next up, we welcome Gary Cheney. So he's going to be screen sharing with us today. Gary is the founder and tireless force behind ShareFest Will County. Gary saw the needs around him and responded with an organization that helps people in the local community. He began as ShareFest New Lenox in 2007 and now organizes and runs ShareFest Will County, through which volunteers do service projects, collect food, books, clothing, recycle electronics, provide job interview training and clothing, and so much more. An article in The Patch called him the connector, the leader who brings everyone together. He helps volunteers connect with people in need. This presentation is brought to you by Christian Brothers Services. Welcome, Gary. Oh gosh, Gary, I don't believe you have audio. I'll bring this full screen for right now. I'll give you a minute to see if you can fix that.
Okay.
We're hearing a little bit, Gary.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, we'll try to do this with the PowerPoint again. All righty. So we're good to go?
Yes, you are.
Right. Well, my name is Gary Cheney, as mentioned, and I do have an organization that was started back in 2007 with a purpose to unite people in compassionate community service for all those in need. And then we have this mission, which seems to be huge, but the mission is really all tied together. So it seems complicated, but that's what was laid on my heart. And I have some slideshows, slides and to share with you how we do this. So feed the hungry, clothe those who need clothing, bringing free healthcare services, job placement services, as mentioned, and really proud about the protecting our environment and uniting our community and sharing and caring events. So how we do all of this, it takes a lot of people, of course, but we do collection events for food, clothes. We're always collecting clothes and passing those out. We do that with books. Sometimes we go through 40,000 books a year. We have actually furniture that when we have space, we take small furniture. We do this with pots and pans. We found out that the people we were serving often had a real problem with pots and pans. They're so expensive and they had improper cookware. So we started, this is actually at Bluestem a couple of years ago. And then those gets passed out to people in need as well. So we do all the collections and then we do the sorting and packing events. And here's an example of one. We bring volunteers from schools, churches, community centers, local organizations, whoever we can get to come in and help us sort. And then we go through these throughout the year. There's always volunteer opportunities to sort and pack. And then here's an example of Lockport Township High School about a week ago came in and helped us sort out 7 bins of clothes and pack some boxes, put them together for the homeless and the homebound people we serve. After we pack all of that together, this is an example of some of our package for a homeless drive that we did and passed out to the homeless in Will County. Here's some examples of how we pack food for families. And then we also take food to pantries because we want the pantries to function properly, and we want to help equip them with enough food as they can get to help feed the people. It's another distribution. By the way, our problem in Will County is not so much acquisition of food, it's more of a distribution problem. So here's an example of taking pallets out to pantries, having a little fun along the way. And then we also take the food, the book, the clothes, the home items, free healthcare services, jobs, and everything out to communities. So we do that throughout Will County. We've put on over 100 of these events over the last 10 years. Here's one in Romeoville. Here's one in Monee. Here's one in Joliet. Here's one in Wilmington. You can see how large the crowds are to, it's great to be able to reuse clothes and books and all the other things we do, but also to give them food and jobs and healthcare. So here's an example of somebody loading their cars up or loading their carts up with food that their cars will be packed when they go home, and we tell them to come back and get more if they need to. Here's some examples of some of the food. We work with local farmers too. I'll bring this up in a minute with our We Will Grow partnership with Will County. But we work with local farmers. Here's some beans and eggplants and potatoes. We pass those out at our events. Here's our clothes. We put them out on tables and people come and get them. We'll go through sometimes a semi-truck load of just clothes at an event. Here's a book exchange and clothing event that we promote. So we like people to bring in items and then at the same time take items what they need out. At our events, and this one was prior to COVID, but we bring our jobs. You can the VNA healthcare van in the back. our employers, our social service agencies. And when we have, 500 to 1,000 families coming to an event, that's a great opportunity to connect people, to help them. And we find that doing this, we provide a lot of resources for the social service agencies to connect with people as well as jobs. And we usually provide 200 to 300 jobs a year to people in need. Here's an example of some screenings that was going on, free healthcare screenings. We feed them. Kathy Pecora is here, kind of dishing out dogs. We like to give them a hot meal when they come. And then we also partnered with Will County to do the We Will Grow program, community garden program. Not if you're not familiar with that program, what we do there is we meet up with churches, community centers, schools, wherever we can find a location that we can partner up with. And the planning starts to take place once we go out. We make sure that they have the space, they have sun, they have water, they have volunteers, maintain it, they have distribution, and then we pay for through our partnership program for the raise. We build them with participation from the community. And then here's an example of what we do. These are some beds out in University Park. Here's another one at Second Baptist. So this was done by a Boy Scout group, earning his Eagle Scout award. Here's some new beds going into University Park, Faith Movers Church. And then All Nations, you might be familiar with, on the south side of Joliet there. So after we build these boxes, we provide the soil, the compost. We put all of that in with volunteers, and then we provide them plants. So here's Sue, one of our local partners, picking up some plants that we just passed out a week ago. And then we take those plants, put them into the boxes. This is actually a screenshot of the Will County Facebook page for the We Will Grow program. And then here's, anytime you have passion to do something, and I believe it when it's the right thing to do, and it's fulfilling your calling, you always have fruit from your labor. So here's some of the fruit from our labor. And you can see the different varieties of cabbages and kale that are in this box. Here's some more over at Second Baptist, the ones I showed you, a little bit ago. Here's Forest Park up on the northeast side of Joliet. A huge yield there. Here's one out in Moni. We have the Joliet Hookup of Black Women. This is their garden. We're expanding that this year, by the way. And then this program, this We Will Grow School and Community Garden program, 33 gardens in it right now. We're looking at yields of over 180,000 pounds of fresh vegetables every year. So it's wonderful to feed people. It's even better when they can feed themselves. So this is a wonderful program, and I just love doing it. We also are huge on our environmental impact projects. And this is a particular one, might know Virgil Kemp from Helpers of Mother Earth. He's just one of our 160 organizational partners. But what you can really see here is all the organizations that were involved in this cleanup project. So it was up in Fairmont. You can see ShareFest, Fishers of Men, the partnership group in Fairmont, Helpers of Mother Earth. That's a typical ShareFest example of working together, uniting together to meet the needs of the people in the community. We also have partnered with the Will County Forest Preserve District from the get-go for every year since 2007, and we do several events a year out into the different Forest Preserve District areas, helping them maintain the forest preserves. One of the things that people associate us with a lot, I believe, is the recycling efforts so that we can reuse and recycle. This is an example of the Will County government and ShareFest collection event. And here it's a collection of hazardous waste and electronics, styrofoam, scrap metal, but we also collect food and books and clothes and toys and home items and items for troops. And so it's a huge collection event. And then we sort through those and pass them out. Here's some things that, and I know I'm going through this quickly, you can find this all on willcountygreen.com or sharefestwillcounty.org. The things you can bring and can't bring. Here's some shots of hazardous waste collection. Here's the electronics collection. scrap metal, wood. We usually go through 3 to 4 containers, 40-yard dumpsters of wood. It's amazing how much we collect of that. Styrofoam is usually about a semi-truckload when we do those events. Here's an example of everybody bringing everything in. We can collect a semi-truck or 2 of goods that gets reused, going back out to people in need throughout the community. And of course, that takes a lot of volunteers. So here is a slide of from the University of St. Francis. Once or twice a year, we'll get volunteers from them. They'll come out. This is at our New Lenox Township yard where we have storage there, and we go through paint and clothes and books and everything, and they came out to help us. So it really gets done through a lot of partnership with other people and leadership. This is a small section of our committee that gets together, and everybody's in charge of something, but you can see that it's done through a lot of organization and planning. For our funding is done, of course, through private donations, and we just were awarded a free forklift. We have a warehouse in New Lenox now, and you know, we've been able to fulfill our mission based on all of the help from other people. So here's my information. Gary Cheney, there's my phone number. You can call or text, and sharefestivalcounty.org is our website.
Perfect. Does anyone have any questions for Gary? Gary, you mentioned distribution to Wilco is an issue. What would help alleviate that?
Well, it would really help alleviate it if we could find ways to work together better. And this would take a long discussion. I can tell you there's major partners in Will County that provide food. And we have been working very hard to have those other organizations, other food banks and distributors to work together. And it has been a challenge, but we see that happening. So, for example, yesterday I had a call. There was an overload of produce and they didn't know what to do with it. And we worked with several organizations to distribute it out. We have a bunch of it stored in our cooler that's going to get distributed out this weekend. Those kinds of things take a tremendous amount of planning. And today we don't have a month to distribute food. We get hours to, you know, say yes to a load of food and then to coordinate a place to give it out. So it takes a tremendous amount of effort, but it works. You know, my one thing would be, I wish that we all could find a way to maybe be a little bit more efficient in how we collect and distribute food. But there is a lot going on, believe me.
Absolutely. Are you currently taking clothing donations? And if so, where?
We do, and the easiest way is to connect with me. We have a warehouse in New Lenox on Schoolhouse Road. It's 22014 Howell Drive in New Lenox. And then we do collect clothes there, and books and some home items, and of course food as well. And all of our sorting and packing pretty much is being done there as well.
Do you repurpose the wood that you collect?
Well, the wood that comes in is in, you heard Marta come on before I, did my presentation, and Marta from Will County Land Use. And, you would better be served because she is the coordinator of that and finding out where that wood goes. I can tell you that it does get reused and repurposed. Unfortunately, having lack of warehouse space, I would have liked to have had more wood to do more with, but we just now acquired our warehouse just in the last few months.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we will definitely have to check in with Marta, or she can update everyone in the feed. She is active, so check it out. Well, thank you so much for all of this information today about ShareFest Will County, Gary.
Well, thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Again, for more information on ShareFest, including collection events, volunteer opportunities, and more, please visit sharefestwillcounty.org. Up next, we have a word from Flat Can Recycling.
Hey there, I'm Kat Gordon, head honcho of Flat Can Recycling. Have you ever stopped to wonder what happens to aerosol products at the end of their life? Well, if you put them out for curbside recycling or take them to your local hazardous waste site, they usually end up in the landfill. This system worked well in the past, but disposal has changed and we now have a better solution. It's a no-brainer why landfills are a problem. Even when aerosol products feel like they're empty, there's always residual liquids and gases inside. This nasty stuff leaks into our residential communities, groundwater, and even our natural habitats. And guess how long it takes for aerosol products to degrade in a landfill? Well, caps and spray tips are usually made of high-density polyethylene, or HDPE, take up to 100 years to degrade in a landfill. Aerosol cans, which are made of lacquered tin plate or steel with a thin layer of tin, take up to 50 years to degrade. And the time it takes for the residual substances to break down varies widely depending on the aerosol product. One example is a water-soluble paint, which is a base of alkali and acrylics, which take up to 13 years to degrade. Other aerosol gases are captured and typically sold back to manufacturers and chemical companies. That's a little bit of a victory in my book. The other option, incineration, is often presented as the environmentally friendly and viable option for hazardous waste removal. Burning waste should be the last resort. We now have solutions to get this waste to the proper channels for recycling. So why isn't anyone doing anything about this? Why aren't people talking about closed-loop recycling for hazardous waste? It is possible. It makes sense that people think when they put aerosol products in their curbside disposal that it's getting routed to the proper channels. Waste disposal companies are well-intentioned and they are doing their best. The trick is that there's few regulations in place to help them properly route aerosol products to the proper channel. Flat Can Recycling is a planet-driven company committed to transparency and making aerosol product recycling accessible to as many people as possible. We're a closed-loop processor that disassembles and recycles the cans of all kinds of aerosol products ranging from spray paint to hairspray to insecticide. You name it, and we even recycle the residual contents. We do this by making recycling accessible to the people we serve, like residents, companies, and municipalities. And our processing partners are experts in the responsible disposal of specialized materials like aerosol products. Our work benefits residential communities and habitats in the Midwest, and we have a lot of fun doing it. We regularly take part at community recycling events. And local hardware stores are coming on board as drop sites for accepting aerosol products. If yours hasn't yet, ask them to, or email us and we'll reach out to them for you. To find a drop site near you, or to find out where we're going to be at for our next community recycling event, visit us at flatcanrecycling.com, or you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook. We're more than happy to have a conversation about how we do what we do. We hope to see you soon.
Wow, I'm going to have to start my home inventory as soon as possible. Who knew that a spray paint can could be broken down into so many pieces? For those of you just tuning in to today's live stream of Bluestem Earth Festival, I'm your host and Bluestem Committee Co-Chair, Megan Butel. We just listened to 3 fantastic speakers covering topics on sustainability. We will now be moving to our next section of today's program, Health and Wellness. Tiffany Mucci-Heitman is a licensed massage therapist at the Center for Wellness and Bodywork in Joliet. She has 13 years of experience working in the chiropractic and wellness settings and is excited to share some safe and simple self-care practices with you today. This presentation is brought to you in memory of supporter and Bluestem friend, Jean Conrad. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me today. I'm here at the center, and I wanted to share some self-care tips and movements that are specific to undoing our computer posture, since over the past year, we've accumulated a whole lot of computer time, whether you're working or learning remotely from home or just doing a lot of extra Zoom calls with families. So these are intended to be done seated. So if you're already in a chair, that's great. If you're sitting crisscross applesauce on the floor, that's fine too. You can adapt what I'm going to show you to that as well. So I'm going to back up a little bit so you can see all of me. Alrighty, first things first, if you're sitting in a chair and you're slumped back or you're slumped forward, I want you to sit upright. So readjust yourself so you're sitting upright and both your feet are making contact with the floor beneath you. With your feet on the floor, you're going to have a more sturdy, more safe position while we do these exercises. All right, very good. I'm going to bring your attention to your pelvis, and I want you to visualize a bowl like so. You have a bowl in your pelvis here, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tipping the bowl forward and tipping the bowl backwards. But first, let's find the bottom of your bowl. If you know where your sits bones are, that's what I want you to be thinking about. If not, take your hands and put one under each cheek, all right? And those bony, knobby protuberances that you're sitting on, those are your sits bones. That's the bottom of your bowl, so that's what I want you to think about. If you're sitting in a hard chair or on the floor, you're finding them right away. If you're in a softer chair and you're not finding your sits bones, that's okay, just visualize the bowl. All right, so here we are. Our awareness is in the pelvis, and you're just going to tip that bowl forward. You're putting a little bit of an arch in the back. You're tipping the bowl forward. If it was full of water, you'd be spilling water out the front of your bowl. That's the idea. All right, slowly give me the opposite. We're going to tilt the bowl backwards. You're tipping water out the back of your bowl. All right, kind of like how a dog tucks his tail between his legs. Let me give you a side view. So we're back right now, tipping water out the back. Now give me the other way, going forward, tipping water out the front. So it's not a really huge movement. It's rather small. You're staying in your seat, but the idea is to rock forward and backwards on your pelvis. So we're going forwards, spilling water out the front. Slowly move back, spill some water out the back. All right, you're getting familiar with this rocking action. We're gonna find our pelvic neutral now, so the center of that. So start shortening up your range. You're tipping less and less water out of the bowl. So, and you're approaching what is your middle on your sits bones. So you're tipping forward and back, less and less water comes out of the bowl as you find a pelvic neutral, you're on your sits bones, you're balancing in your center. Now it'll probably feel new and different, and that's kind of what we're going for. If it's just really uncomfortable and doesn't feel right for you, then I would encourage you to keep playing around with the movement and find something that feels safe for you. But new and different is good. Painful, not so much. All right, we have our hands here on our hips or just above. And this is an opportunity to give yourself a little bit of self-massage. So I like to think of how a kitty cat needs his paws into a cushion or into your leg if he's friendly. And you can use your hands to just knead back and forth gently. And I'll turn around so you can see the back of me. Your thumbs can get at the back muscles in your low back. And you're just kind of following along into the into the muscle tissue, into the soft tissue, along that upper rim of your bowl, of your pelvis. Very good. Okay, from here, now that you're in a neutral position with your pelvis, you might be noticing that the rest of your body upwards wants to readjust around this new normal that you've found. So your low back is finding its place over your pelvis. And your ribs and chest are also finding a position over the low back, over the pelvis. You might feel that you're lifting up a little bit and opening through the chest, and that's a good thing. Oh, and most importantly, where is your head? So your head is going to come back a little bit over the body. And I'm going to turn again to show you what I mean. So what does it look like when we've been sitting at the computer all day? It's kind of like this. And our head comes way in front of the body. And we have this forward head carriage, as we call it. So we're correcting that by finding our pelvic neutral. The rest of the spine and the shoulders and the neck follow suit so that the head comes back. Your head is over your spine, over your body. All right, beautiful. I'm going to scooch a little closer. Let's think about our shoulders now. So give me a shrug. Bring your shoulders up towards your ears. Good. Now de-shrug. Give me the opposite. Dropping the shoulders down. Unshrugging. Nice. Let's shrug them up again. Towards the ears. And de-shrug. Take those shoulders away. All right, we've lowered our shoulders. Your hands can find the bottom of your chair and just gently hang on to encourage the shoulders to stay lowered. If you're on the floor by chance, you can just kind of sit underneath your hands. All righty, we're going to do a little bit of neck stretching here. So just ear to shoulder, go one way, ear to shoulder. I'm going to say right now that if you suffer from vertigo or if you have disc issues in the neck, I would recommend staying here and just breathing into this simple stretch, feeling the lengthening, the opening that's happening in the web of your neck here. If not, and you feel safe with this, and you're a little adventurous, I'm going to give you a couple progressions. So the first one goes like this. So we've got our ear towards our shoulder. Now the top of your head is going to move slightly towards the back wall of the room, like so. And it's a small movement. You're just letting the top of your head tilt towards the back wall of the room. Your neck is going to let you know right away that it's feeling this, because you're going to feel this lengthening through the side and front. All right, we don't have to stay there long. Take the head back forward and up. Let's do the other side. Ear to shoulder. You may stay here if this is enough for you. If you'd like to take it a step further, let's just gently tilt the head back towards the back wall of the room. Your neck is opening wide through here, through the side and the front. All kinds of lengthening happening there. Good. Bring your head back forward, nice and easy. Come back up. All right, good. There's a third progression to that one. All right. So again, other side. Ear to shoulder. If you like, tilt the head towards the back of the room, just a bit. It doesn't take much. All right, now if you want to take it even further, a little bit more dynamic here, you can very slowly with me turn to look up at the ceiling, just a little bit. Don't force anything. This is really giving some stretch and length to not just the muscle tissue, but some of this nerve plexus as well that's running out through the neck into the shoulder. All right, that's enough of that. Bring the head back forward and up. Woo! Catch your breath. Let's do the other side. Ear to shoulder. Top of the head just moves gently towards the back of the room. Again, less is more. And if you're feeling particularly adventurous, just turn the head a little bit to gaze up towards the ceiling. You are lengthening all kinds of soft tissue through here. Good. Gaze back at your screen. Bring the head back up to neutral. Find your equilibrium. Very nice. All right, and finally, let's take our attention to the back of the neck and the base of the skull. I'm going to turn around and show you. So your hands are in the back of your head, and use your thumbs to locate the ridge of your skull, the base of your skull. And again, little kitty cat paws are kneading into the muscles up here. This is my favorite place to receive massage. These little muscles do so much for us, especially when we're sitting at a computer screen. They're helping to hold our head in place, and they're also associated with the precision, the very fine movements of our head and neck. I always think about owls when I think about these muscles because they move their heads with such acuity. Alrighty, now to stretch these guys back here, it's very simple, but not the most flattering of looks, but effective. So you're gonna give yourself a double chin. I'll give you an angle here so you can watch. So just place your finger on your chin and tuck that chin down and in. And you're gonna find a whole bunch of opening and lengthening through the back of the neck, the base of the skull. And relax out of that. I'm gonna face you. It shouldn't feel like a strain, but if you feel a stretch, that's great. So let's do it again. Just tuck that chin in, give yourself a double chin. You're opening up through the back of the neck. The base of your skull is unhinging like the lid to a treasure chest. It's opening up. You may feel this stretch travels down into the upper back. That is not uncommon to feel since these tend to get so shortened up on us. Good. Relax out of that. Now smile. Smiling is part of our posture too. Very good. That's it. These are things we can do. They're meant to do while you're sitting at your computer. I would encourage you to do little movements with your pelvis when you're sitting at your computer or binging on Netflix for that matter, to remind your body of how it can move, that it can stay soft and supple. We don't have to be doing big grand movements in order to maintain our mobility. I can take a question or two at this time, or I do have bonus material if anyone's interested. So up to you guys.
All right, let's see if any questions come in. Probably the question everyone's going to be asking, are you taking new clients at the Wellness Center?
Yes, I am taking new clients. I can give you my contact information, and I do have COVID-19 safety protocols as well, but of course I can always go over those with each person on an individual basis. Yes.
Absolutely.
Right. Should I jump into a little bit of bonus stuff? Or
sure. We do have one question that came in of what are some common problems that you see and better habits that we could have at home?
Oh, that's a great question. Let's see. I do see a lot of headaches, different kinds of headaches, whether they're migraines or tension headaches. And I see a whole range of other musculoskeletal conditions, knees, wrists, all that sort of thing. Better habits that you can do at home is, think about these movements that I shared with you today. I know they're small and simple, but we were focused on the very center line, the core of our body. For example, when you are in a more neutral position in your pelvis and spine, and you go to move your head and neck, it's healthier to do that from a centered place as opposed to when you're hunched forward and you're going like this. You can see what strain that puts on the neck and might lead to tension headaches over time.
Absolutely. I don't see any other questions, so maybe if you want to do one bonus thing and then we can take it from there.
Great, let's do it. I want to do hands because our hands are doing this and they're doing this. So let's just quickly go like this. You can follow along. Take one hand and just gently but firmly grip just beneath the wrist of your other hand and just start moving that hand back and forth, flexion and extension. You can do some twisting action like you're screwing in a light bulb, and you're gonna feel or hear some clicks going on in that wrist. Yes, very good. Okay, and because you're anchoring down the skin here, you're allowing for a little bit of deeper movement within the wrist joint, the tendons and the bones. And you can always do some self-massage on your hands too, lotion or no lotion. Just grab and sink into the thumb pads. I like to just go like this. Let me get closer. I just like to squeeze along each finger. When I get to the fingernail, I just hold and squeeze. There's lots of nerve endings down here. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Next finger. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Your middle finger, hold when you get to the fingertip. Ring finger, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Hold. Pinky, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Hold. If we have time, I'll just do that on your other side for you. Gentle but firm grip on them just below the wrist. Flex and extend that hand. Screw in some light bulbs. Hear the clicking. Oh yes, good. With your other hand, squeeze that thumb. Hold when you get to the fingernail. Next finger, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Hold when you get to the fingernail. Middle finger, squeeze all the way down, just hold for a moment. Ring finger, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And pinky, squeeze, 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 and hold. And jazz hands, why not? Awesome.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany, for those helpful practices. I personally am going to have to do these myself. We don't really realize how many long-term problems can start from simply sitting at the computer or watching TV, things like that.
The good news is it doesn't take much to undo some of that. Thank you for
great.
sharing.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
Great. Wonderful to be here.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, just a quick reminder, our Bluestem raffle is closing soon, very soon. It closes at noon sharp, so visit go.rallyup.com/Bluestem to purchase entries before time is out. We have a wonderful collection of prizes in support or directly from some of our local businesses, ranging from native plants to rain barrels. There's a spice collection, photography. There's just so much. So go check it out before time runs out. Next, we have a word from the Porciuncula Center for Prayer. A note prior to watching, this video includes a very brief guided meditation. So if you'd like to take a moment to adjust in your chairs or general location, please do so now.
Welcome to the Porciuncula Center for Prayer. The port is nestled in St. Francis Woods and rooted in the Franciscan tradition. Let's take just a moment to place ourselves in the peace of this sacred place. It's part of our mission as a sacred space of welcome for those seeking peace of mind, body, and spirit. We offer you today a meditation to help you get in touch with God who dwells within you and brings peace to your heart and soul. I invite you to picture yourself seated on this bench. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes. Feel the weight of your body on the bench, your feet on the grassy ground. Take some calming, deep breaths. As you inhale, you might allow the Spirit, the breath of God, to fill you with peace. As you exhale, feel yourself let go of any tension, concern, anxiety within you. Continue breathing deeply, inhaling peace, exhaling until the peace is flowing both into you and out from you. Looking at this picture of the creek prompts me to use the image of a river to help in this meditation, to use our imagination and to get in touch with what is going on in our hearts at this present time. Bring to mind images of a river, perhaps as it begins as a mountain stream with clear, sparkling water over the rocks in the riverbed. See the river progress through rapids and waterfalls, now flowing quietly in deeper, wide places, shaded by trees. Now over by the banks, a whirlpool where the waters slowly swirl around in circles. Now you can see it as a narrow, shallow, meandering stream. Like a river, our lives too are on a journey where many changes take place. We invite the Spirit of God to help us see clearly. And I ask you, where are you on the river of your life? What is the image that you see? You may wish to spend some quiet time today considering what image came to you, what feelings emerged for you. You might try journaling about the experience. We at the Porciuncula Center for Prayer offer our services, programs, hermitages, body work, spiritual direction, the lovely grounds, the outdoor labyrinth, the cosmic walk, and more, to assist you in finding a sacred space of welcome as you seek peace of mind, body, and spirit. We invite you, come to the woods.
Thank you so much, Sister Janice. I'm so relaxed we can wrap up the festival right now. Just kidding. Since this portion of the virtual festival covers health and wellness includes food, right? Up next, enjoy a cooking demonstration from Pam Travis.
Good morning, my name is Pam Travis. Today we're going to make my grandmother Riggenbach's homemade egg noodles. They're the very simplest thing in the world to make. I learned to cook when I was in high school. My mother worked afternoons, and so it was my job to cook dinner for myself, my 3 brothers, and my stepfather. My mother would have dinner preparations made. The dinner preparations would be in the refrigerator. The instructions would be on a piece of paper, and I would come home and start dinner. And this is how I learned to love to cook. However, after we had dinner, I would get up from the table and my brothers would have to clean up. They would have to load the dishwasher, clean the stove, and clean up the mess that I made while I was cooking. So consequently, I love to learn to cook. I still love to cook today, but I have to do the cleanup myself. We're going to start with these noodles with a cup of all-purpose unbleached flour and a teaspoon of salt. To this mixture, we're going to add egg yolks. We're going to start with 4 egg yolks. I normally do not use a recipe. I just make these noodles as I go. You get a feel for how the noodles should be made. They have a certain texture. So we're going to combine these 4 egg yolks into this cup of flour. And I need to stress, only egg yolks. And you can see as we mix this, and I would encourage you to only buy organic eggs. We have a farmer here locally in Carrollton that I get my eggs from every week, and they are free-range organic eggs. So this is how the dough looks. It's dry, and we just need it to come together so that we can roll it out. So to do that, I'm just going to add a little bit of water, just a touch. This will bring our dough together so that we can roll it out. Now, normally when I make eggs or make noodles, I make 2 or 3 cups of flour. So you would have to accordingly increase the ingredients. But this is going to actually make a lot of noodles. Okay, I use a pastry cloth. You can do this on a wooden board. I'm going to flour my pastry cloth. Dump out my dough. And form it into a ball. If it's sticky, just add flour to it. The most important thing about making noodles is that you don't work your dough too much. You don't handle it too much. If you do handle your dough too much, then your your noodles can be very tough. This dough is just about right. Now, at this point during the process, I would take this bowl, put it over the noodles, and I would let it rest for 30 minutes. But because of time today, I'm not going to allow the dough to rest. This just lets the gluten in the flour relax down a little bit so your noodles aren't tough. And we're going to roll the noodles out. I also use a sleeve on my rolling pin when I roll out dough like this, or even pie dough. It just doesn't allow the dough to stick. And we just keep adding flour. You don't want to add too much flour, just enough to keep it from sticking. Now you can roll this dough out as thick or as thin as you like. We kind of like thick noodles here, kind of big and thick. My grandmother used to make all kinds of noodles. She would make thick, wide noodles. She would make, somehow, I don't know how she did it, but she could make almost angel hair noodles by cutting them very, very thin. And when she rolled out her dough like this, she would roll it up and then cut the noodles from the roll. I have never been able to master that. I always end up with my noodles sticking together. So what I use is pizza cutter. She would also make noodles in squares about like this, and she called them Popeyes. And I think this might have come from the Pennsylvania Dutch, but my grandfather was actually from Switzerland. And these noodles were a product of his Swiss heritage. I think she must have learned to make these noodles from her mother-in-law. That feels pretty good. Now I'm just going to grab my pizza cutter. And we're never been very particular about how our noodles look. It's all about the way they taste. Now this same dough you can use to make dumplings. Instead of a dry dough though, you add extra egg yolks and make it a little bit wet. And then you can just drop your dumplings by a teaspoonful into either boiling chicken broth or beef broth or ham broth. Now I had an uncle, my dad's brother, who loved his dumplings in hot tomato juice, which I've never tried, but he loved them. So you just continue cutting out your noodles, and then you just kind of put them over here because you want them to dry out a little bit. Now some people will cook these in boiling salted water before they put them in their broth. I've never done that because I like my chicken broth a little bit thick, and the extra flour helps to thicken the broth. And these are what they look like. You can cut them in half if you don't want long noodles. I just dump them in the boiling water and away they come. So this is how you make homemade noodles. Very easy.
Do you take home cooked orders, Pam? Deliver to Illinois, ship to Illinois? Let me know. Drop your contact info in the chat. I'm sure other people would be interested. We now welcome Janet Ario. As a child, Janet helped her grandpa in the garden. She went with her grandma, aunt, and mom to farms to pick bushels of tomatoes for canning. While living in Chicago, she stayed with a friend's mother one summer. Her friend had broken her ankle, so Janet planted her garden and tended to it. That's when she absolutely fell in love with gardening. When she moved back to Joliet, she helped her dad tend his community plot at JJC and his plot at home. She was the weeder, which she loved. A few years back, she and her husband went through the Master Gardener program at the University of Illinois Extension Center in Joliet. The last year of the community garden in 2018, they had 600 square feet of personal plots, 1,600 of Master Gardener plots that they cared for with other team members. 800 were pollinators and 800 for children. It was a little piece of garden heaven. This presentation is brought to you by the Dave Walker Memorial. Thank you so much for joining us today, Janet.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for being here on this very beautiful Saturday morning. So we came from 600 square feet coming back to our yard, so I had to find a lot of small spaces in my yard. Not that it makes up the 600 square feet, but we still get a lot out of our yard. So starting like from the outside the kitchen door, which is the south side of our house, we've got a spot that's 13 feet long by 2 feet deep. And that's where I grow most of the kitchen herbs. Like I have oregano, which is a perennial, cilantro, and I always try to get the slow bolt, which means it's slow to flower. And I cut it fresh, but I also let some of it go to seed. And I have a coffee grinder that's dedicated just to herbs and spices, and I grind up the seeds. They're very nice to add the last couple minutes to soups, to stews. It gives a nice aroma and a very nice fresh flavor. I also plant tarragon and marjoram there. And we grow a lot of basil. I'm not sure if I said that. And we make pesto, homemade pesto, and freeze it. But I also take the basil leaves and freeze the basil leaves. So you can freeze them in ice cube trays with water. You could use a regular ice cube tray, or Ball makes a small ice cube tray where the cube part is a little bit bigger so you can fit more basil leaves in there. And this year at Hobby Lobby, I also saw a silicone, which is a Ball is also a silicone freezer, but silicone cube tray, which is actually bigger than the Ball tray. After you freeze them, you can put them into a freezer bag. I also have a vacuum sealer because I freeze a lot. And when you freeze these, it's better if you can put them in a deep freeze, because as the freezer goes through the defrost cycle, your cubes start to melt and then they clump together, which is just a little bit harder to use. You have to break them apart, but they're still very usable. So that's like right outside my kitchen door. In the front, I have a little spot that's 7.5 feet long by 3.5 feet deep. I plant marigolds for dyeing and some pollinator plants, but I also plant nasturtiums for eating. So I like to pick them for, fresh salads. So most of them don't make it into the house. Mostly I eat them outside, but they're very nice if you've ever had them. They have a nice little peppery flavor. And at the community garden, children used to eat these all the time too, so they're not too hot, and they really love them. One thing, along the driveway, I have a spot that's 9.5 feet long by 1.5 feet deep, and on each end I have a shepherd's hook, the kind that has 4 hooks on it, so it's a little bit stronger. And at each pole, I plant cardinal climbers. They're not really for people to eat, but they attract a lot of hummingbirds. If you like to see hummingbirds in your yard, they're a very good thing to have. And then at the east side of the house, along the house, which is the back of the house, I have 13 feet by 3 feet. And I plant garlic there. I plant it in the fall for, one line. And then I do, in March, I plant a line of leek seeds. And leeks are another thing that I plant a lot of, and I freeze them. I like to make leek and onion soup, leek and onion, or leek and mushroom, or add leeks to any soup or stew. They add a really nice flavor. I like them better in a soup or stew because the greens can be kind of tough, but they get really tender there. So I grow enough to freeze them too to last through the winter. I also have daffodils growing there, and now I've cut those back, and next weekend I'll plant some peppers and some tomatoes there. So this year, my niece and her husband planted tomatoes and peppers from seeds, and they had a lot of extra, and they gave us 2 whole trays. So we have a lot to plant this year, and we'll give some to our neighbors too. Let's see. One year actually for a couple of years, we planted okra there on the east side of the house and got a lot of okra. It's kind of the thing, maybe, you like it or don't like it. I grew up with it, so I like it. In our backyard too, we have a kidney-shaped garden that my husband dug up. And there's a spot that's 9 foot by 5 foot where we have raspberries. So we have yellow, red, and black raspberries. It is very nice because they come up at different times. So we have raspberries for a lot of the summer. The only thing about them is you have to water them and you have to cut out the dead canes. Let's see, along the south side of the garage, I have like 23 feet by 1.5 feet deep. And I plant lavender there, and I use the lavender for sachets and for teas. So I like Earl Grey tea is my favorite. I like to add lavender buds to it. And then along the back of the garage, which is the east side, that's where I have my larger plot, and that is 18 by 18. we always have a set of poles in there, and this year we have a U-shaped set of poles. So it's different each year, but last year we decided to do this. And then we hang up peanuts and we plant peas, sweet peas, and beans, pole beans. So we have those growing all year. One thing before I forget is, we have all these insects, right? You have to have the bees are the pollinators. And we also have praying mantises. So we buy the egg nests, but last year we actually harvested 2 egg nests from our yard and put them in the the refrigerator over the winter. And by next weekend or this weekend, we're going to put them out so they can hatch. Along the outer edge of this U in our garden, around where we have sweet peas and pole beans, I've planted garlic in the fall. So that'll be ready to pick in July. And then I have green onions and chives. So all the green onions I'm going to take out either this weekend or this week, and I'll be making, one of 2 things. I haven't decided yet. Either I'll make this pie that my mom used to make with green onions and feta cheese, or I'm going to make a green onion soup, which is really very good. If you like onion soup, green onion soup is like that. It's very good, and the greens add a little different flavor to them. Now on the inside of the U, which is the biggest area, I like to plant greens. So I have kale, Swiss chard, parsley, beets, and carrots. And the beets, you have to thin out because every seed is really 4 beets. So if you thin them out very small, you could just use them as a salad. Or if you don't want to let them get too big because you want the beet roots to have room to grow. So you can thin them and you can eat those. I just looked over to my freezing notes. So I freeze the beets too. So I freeze the roots, but also the greens. I love the greens. It's like they're probably next to spinach, the most tender greens, and chard. And I don't know if you know this, but Swiss chard actually is a beet without the beet root. So if you like one, you'll probably like the other. So I also have in there different lettuce varieties and radishes. This week I took out all the radishes and I thinned the lettuce a lot. I see there's a question. So yes, Rita. Let's see. Rita's just asked me, sorry, I got distracted, if I could post some of my recipes. Yes, I could. I'm happy to post them afterwards. So the lettuces, so we have several different varieties and I plant them really thick so that there's a lot to thin out because you can eat them as baby greens or microgreens, but I like to let them grow about 3 or 4 inches and then pull them out. And let's see what else. I see there's another question. I could actually answer it as I'm doing this. What have you found to be difficult to grow? And carrots, I would say, they're kind of the most temperamental. They seem to want to have a certain ground temperature, soil temperature. So a lot of times I have planted and replanted carrots to get them. At the community garden, we had a 10 by 20 filled with beets. And, you kind of get lost when you have so many beets and so many greens growing. And my husband said, hey, look at this one day. It was just a beet that we overlooked. It was 4 pounds. And I thought, oh, this is going to be, really woody. I mean, it was huge. It was like I took a picture of it on the newspaper, the Herald News, and it was about the size of that, folded in half. And so I cooked it separately because I thought, try it. But it was perfect. It was perfectly tender. No woodiness to it at all. So the lettuce and the radishes, so as that comes out, I'll put peppers and tomatoes in there too. So what would I say, like for you, what I would recommend is to like measure the small areas in your yard because you can find a lot of things. Oh, there's one more spot I didn't tell you about. Also by outside my kitchen door, I have one spot that's 1 foot by 2 feet deep. And I put lovage there. I saw lovage at Old World, Chicago. No, yes, Old World, Wisconsin. I'm thinking of up in Bolingbrook. If you've never been there and if you like to go see gardens, it is a great place to see gardens. But so I thought, oh, gee, it looks so much like celery. Maybe it'll taste like celery. I've never used it, and it's very strong. So I'm learning, how to use lovage, and it's one of my goals for this summer to learn how to use lovage. And last year was the first time I've used majoram. And I also am still trying to learn how to use tarragon. But I like to try at least one thing new every year. That way you've always got, something extra to do in your garden. So think about, your small areas where you could fit something. And think about what you like to eat. My cousin has a small space by the garage for a garden. It's maybe just 5 feet by 2 feet. But she loves tomatoes, so she plants tomato plants there. You can plant either seeds or you can plant young plants. If you plant seeds, sometimes you might want to soak them overnight, especially like beans and peas. If you plant those cardinal climbers for hummingbirds, I soak them overnight. And you have to figure that you have to thin them if you plant seeds. And if you plant the plants, give them enough room to grow. Like look at how big they expect to get. Because you don't want to crowd everything too much. They need to get air and they need to get light. What else do I want to say to you? Oh, weeding. So at the community garden, there were a lot of first-time gardeners, and they would come in and they would plant their plot, and then they would come back at the end of the season to harvest, and their plot would be filled with weeds. And they didn't realize that they had to come back and weed. And I try to weed, a couple times a week, although our garden doesn't really grow very many weeds now at this point. We've been taking care of it, very good care of it for quite a while. But a good rule of thumb is to make sure you have the weeds under control by the 4th of July. Otherwise, they grow like crazy and it's hard to get a handle on them. In watering, if you plant seeds, you really need to water every day. Not a lot, but enough to keep them moist. And as they sprout in their young plants, or if you plant the very young plants, they're delicate and they're tender. Water them delicately, like maybe just mist them. Or if you shower them with the hose, don't have the water on full speed. Have it on kind of light, so you're caring for them as a delicate plant. Now for composting, we have a composter in the backyard that we put our kitchen produce scraps in there. Some people put their grass clippings in there. We don't really get that much, and I just let them in the grass. But we also use mushroom compost. We use some peat moss. And in every couple years in the fall, my husband will plant some straw. We don't rototill our garden. He just, digs it up. And actually, at this point, it is very easy to dig up. It's very soft because of all the years that we've been tending it. So, let's see. I can keep talking. Let's see what else. I think there are things I didn't tell you. In the front yard, I have a nice tree, and I have hostas around the tree and a couple of rocks for like a fairy garden. Not the kind where you put a lot of fairy garden decorations in, but just I think of as a fairy garden. So there is a question, what a nice family activity gardening is. The story of children eating too. I never thought of it. Yes, the children's garden that we had a couple different groups of children, and they would come in different age groups. And it is nice for children to see where food comes from. Like we had children plant peas, and they came up right away and asked me, well, I planted my pea. Can I have my peas now? You know, just not having any idea where food comes from. Or one person in the community garden had a plastic cow as a decoration, and one child asked me, is that a cow, a real cow? And, you know, we're so far removed from our food. And so it's great. You know, I like to work with children in the garden. Now, my next door neighbor never gardened. And he asked us last fall, I want to plant a garden next year. Will you help me? And so, you know, we said, oh, sure. So, you know, my husband mostly has been helping him, and he has planted radishes, lettuce, cilantro. He put in asparagus. I had some leftover peas, and I gave him some peas to plant, and they're coming up. And his children come over, well, one daughter especially, last year would come over while I was in the garden last year, and she'd say, well, what do you have for me? What vegetable can I eat? And I'd give her cucumbers or pieces of Swiss chard, and she would just try everything, you know. And that's how the children's community garden were. We had strawberries growing. They would eat strawberries. They would try garlic greens. They would come back and ask for garlic greens. You know, they're just, children are more adventuresome than we give them credit for with food if we just let them, you know, be out there and try it and see it. I think I can't.
Please feel free to chat with us.
Are you asking for questions?
Yep.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So, don't know if we have any more questions. Okay, Robert. Yes.
Do you have any advice for beginners?
Well, it would be, I would say, you know, plant what you like.
Mm-hmm.
If you're very beginning, go ahead and buy the plants, especially like tomatoes and peppers, if that's what you want. But I would say plant what you want to eat, you know, and just try it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try anything. Everything that we try doesn't work. Things fail, but we learn a little bit more about it after that. And, you know, and that's the whole point of gardening, and it's a lot of the fun of it. Carrots were difficult. Anything else? Well, let's see, in the community garden, potatoes were difficult. They're not difficult here, and we have planted, well, my favorites are Yukon Gold and those blue, or what they call purple potatoes. They can be difficult to dig up because you spear them a lot, but if I spear them, I usually cook those right away. So but out of the community garden is what I say. We had a lot of potato bugs. I don't get them out here though. I've had problems with zucchini only because we have borers, so that's made it pretty hard. We used to be able to grow zucchini here fine. Well, it goes well in pots. Well, if you like mints, like spearmint or peppermint, it's best to grow those in pots because they're very aggressive and it's very hard to get those out. Nasturtiums grow well in pots. Tomatoes, peppers. I tried growing potatoes in those potato sacks last year. That didn't work for me.
Oh gosh. Well, what fascinating information. I love the detail that you put into all your different locations in your home. And I hope some of our viewers can take your advice and do the same in their own home. So thank you so much for joining us today, Janet.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on. It's been
absolutely. Take care. Up next, we have a word from Rita Travis following her journey raising chickens.
Rita Travis. Those of you who know me know that I love chickens. And when I lived in Joliet, I had many chickens and shared eggs with many of you. But this fall, I moved to Carrollton, Ohio, and I'm on 27 acres in the country. And this is a perfect place to begin to start over again with my chickens. However, there is no chicken coop here, so the process needed to start with that. So as you can see, this doesn't look like a great day for doing much about chickens, but I ordered the coop from an Amish gentleman who lives up the street, and he is building it to my specifications. And a neighbor has all kinds of great heavy equipment, and he came and he put in this crushed limestone pad, which you can barely see. He leveled it off because we're in a rather hilly area, as you can see. And so it's leveled off and all ready for the coop to come. I will put in some pictures of the coop, and it should be delivered in about a week and a half. And after that, we'll begin to order the chicks. But first, we'll have to finish the inside of the coop with a little bit of insulation and paneling or some kind of plywood. And then we'll get some electricity in there because baby chicks must be kept extremely warm for the first several weeks of their lives. So stay tuned for the adventures of Rita's new hen house. Have a great day. Okay, today was the day that we went to the hatchery, and in this little box are about 26 little chickens. So I'm going to open it and you can take a look at them. And here they are, quite a few different breeds. And then we're going to put them in this tub over here that is all warmed up to 90 degrees. And food and water are in there. So we're going to pick them up one by one and set them in here. So all the chickens need to be taken in one by one and shown the water because they were just born this morning. So here everybody is in their new home. They're getting, finding the water, they're finding the food. They're actually standing in it because they weren't quite tall enough to get through it. And they are just the cutest things you'd ever want to see. So they'll be in this tub for a couple of weeks, staying warm. And this is one of the interesting things about the baby hens, is they will just fall over and fall asleep anywhere. And they tell you, don't worry, because they look like they're dead, but they're not really. They're just like little puppies and kittens. They just fall over and go to sleep. So here we are outside. The coop is finished. We started doing a little landscaping, and I planted some service berries and some other plants. And we had to move the chickens outside already because in 3 weeks' time, they outgrew the brooder that was in the house, and they were able to fly out, and they were just too big to be confined to a small space. So we moved them out here the other day. And my brother and I, out of cardboard, built this large brooder. They have to be in a contained space in order to keep them warm, they really need to still be around 80 degrees. And here they are in their new cardboard high-tech brooder. The lamp at the far end is keeps them about 80 to 90 degrees. And we put a little roof of cardboard on it to try and help keep the heat in, because it has just been so chilly here lately. And they really don't have feathers yet, they have down. And so the coop has a couple of windows. As you can see, we finished the walls. We've got a loft for storage. And back here on the back wall, we have some nesting boxes and some supplies. And they will not be laying eggs probably until the fall. It'll take them that long to grow up. And so in their brooder box, they have a couple of waterers, a couple of feeders. They are 3 weeks old on Monday, and they have eaten 40 pounds of food already and tripled in size. And so they just needed to be in a larger space, and some of them have come out of the box and are running around, having a good time. And we did put a little space heater in here. I run it a little bit during the day just to add some extra warmth for them. So this is the last segment of the Rita's New Hen House video. And as they get bigger, I'll post a few photos on the Bluestem, probably the Bluestem Facebook page.
Just a quick update, all chickens are still thriving for those who are curious. Thank you so much, Rita, for sharing your story. The internet needs more chicken videos. Last, but certainly not least, on today's speaker agenda, we have Heather Data. For more than 14 years, Heather has provided her unique designs and expertise to the creation of colorful outdoor environments. Before starting Airy Prairie Enterprises, Heather has worked for landscaping companies on prestigious commercial accounts all around Chicagoland and many, many homes in the city and suburbs. From her humble start as a professional gardener, she knows the hands-on care to make a landscape a success. Heather graduated from Joliet Junior College with a degree in horticulture and landscape management. Although she has worked on a variety of projects, her passions have always been in our Illinois native roots and the world that existed here before the settlers came, the anti-landscape. Heather is now an advocate and creator of sustainable landscapes using plants that are indigenous to our area. These landscapes are stylish and colorful, take less time and effort to maintain, need no toxic pesticides, and attract the wildlife that are dependent on native plants. This presentation is brought to you by Darcy Motors. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Hi. How's that sound?
It's perfect. You're good.
Oh, great. Well, first, I'd like to thank Janine and, of course, letting me be on this podcast, and my husband for buying me this great new microphone. So there's a lot that goes into creating a landscape, and I hope that I'm preaching to the choir. So as she said, I create sustainable landscapes, and mainly that means that I landscapes using native plants or plants that are indigenous to this area, if you're not sure what that means. So I think we've had a lot of gardeners on today, which is great. I've been probably a gardener for much longer than I've been a landscape designer, and my passion brought me into the field of landscape design. I've worked on projects all over the city, dealt primarily with residential landscape and also 4-season annual rotation. And eventually that makes you sad because you kind of go in and rip things out and everybody on, and it's not really how I felt. It wasn't the person that I wanted to be, just spraying chemicals that I don't believe in that. So now I'm doing native landscaping. It's my second year with this business. I had a business previously. And I put together a great presentation to share with all of you. I'm hoping that some of you have an idea of butterfly gardens, native plants, but if you're not, we're going to start from the beginning. And if you just want to know a little bit about how to design a landscape, this is going to be helpful for you too. So I'm going to switch over to my PowerPoint. And I'm going to play my PowerPoint, I think, if I can remember how to do that. Yay! So creating your native home landscape. And here's the most important part: without freaking out the neighbors, which is what everybody is always worried about. What are the neighbors gonna think? That guy down the street, he saw a dandelion in your lawn, and he's gonna come knock on your door and tell you he doesn't like it. And I think a lot of people think too much about what other people think, and I always kind of consider myself kind of a little bit of outcast. So here I am. So I'm going to walk you guys through my thought process for creating a typical suburban front landscape. Now, we could have done the back landscape where you have butterfly gardens kind of tucked away in the back garden, or perhaps a little rain garden off to the side of your house. But realistically, we need to start planting native plants everywhere. So we're going to talk about front landscape and how to make it look good. So what do humans consider when planning their landscape? You want to complement the architecture of the house. You want to think about balance and repetition. Functionality, what is the space going to be used for? Beauty, because it feeds the soul. And a note on that, I believe that all flowering plants are lovely, and I would never say, oh, you can have that lilac, if you love it, you should enjoy having it. So seasons of interest, so you want to make sure that you have something there for spring, some flowers, for summer, of course, fall, usually you have some kind of plants that turn color, and then for winter you want to have usually people want an evergreen, or at least something that's up and providing interest in the winter. A lot of people want low maintenance.
Heather, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We're seeing your PowerPoint window on the original slide before you launched the PowerPoint. Could you do a reshare with it in full screen?
How exactly do I do that?
So if you are in full screen, you can hit your window key to go out and switch back to the live studio, and then you can share it.
Okay, let's make sure we get this nice and quick because I'm going to run out of time.
You're good. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Thanks for letting me know. From current slide. Is that better?
Okay, let me turn this on.
We have what humans consider when planting their landscapes.
Correct. So yes, so we're seeing it through your PowerPoint window. We're not seeing it through the slides. If you go full screen, let's see if it takes over. Otherwise, I guess for now we can just view it through through PowerPoint. That's okay. If not.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll same way. So we're all looking at the same thing. I don't know why it's doing that, but oh well. Low maintenance, low maintenance? Cost, of course, always comes into consideration. You know, maybe a small section and then move around and finish for later. Using the appropriate plant for the site so they do not die. You maybe want to do some research before you plant something and make sure that it's for the soil conditions, the sun, the shade, the soil moistness. Plant that you like. People mainly want to plant what they like. Curb appeal. We're going to be talking a little bit about curb appeal because we're doing the landscape. The Joneses, those guys are always they think, and then weed free. What's if you guys have anything else you'd like to add? What does a typical human do when their first landscape their suburban house? You either go to the landscaper or you go to the big box. At the big box, they don't have any native plants. They definitely don't have a lot of information. You're lucky if you find a landscaper that knows native plants or has an idea about sustainability, but a lot of them kind of do the same things, which is spray the weeds and put down pesticides and herbicides. What nature considers when planting a landscape. That's what I do. I paint a little tree in this corner, a little bush in that corner, and I'm going to walk you guys through the process of creating a rendering for a home landscape that that you can kind of get an idea of the process. So nature plants in nature, plants grow in drifts. Plants and seeds are carried by the wind or by wildlife and take hold in new areas than before. The landscape changes with the changes in the site conditions and the climate. And that goes back millennia. And then from all that, a symbiotic relationship between wildlife and plants has developed over time. And that's important to enjoy not just the plants in our landscape, but we enjoy the animals. And for me, going on a nature walk is just the most beautiful and serene thing that I could do. And I love being being able to go out into nature. And I think it's really fun to know that you can bring that to your home. What else humans should consider when planting their landscape? You should be thinking about harmony and habitats, toxicity. Is it safe to humans and wildlife? Future generations, finding natural solutions to site problems. Back to future generations, trees. You know, people have chopped down in this area, and it makes you wonder, you know, what future generations are going to inherit. And if you plant a tree today, you might never sit in its shade, but you'll have a better understanding of, are these plants native or indigenous to this area? You're asking yourself that question because we want to live harmony with wildlife. Site conditions, of course, that was mentioned. Everybody should think about that. The impact on the environment, chemicals that you are putting on your lawn actually end up waterways, and it's detrimental to the sea life. Is it pollinator friendly? Bees are going away at an alarming rate as well. So here's some more alarming statistics. Today, less than 1% of untouched prairie remains in the state of Illinois. That's crazy because this is the prairie state. Only 15% of the state is still forested. Overall, monarch numbers have declined by more than 80% over the past 2 decades because of loss of habitat, especially, and of also the use of pesticides. And of course, as everybody knows, the monarch butterfly is dependent on the milkweed plant. It is its only host. Of course, it gets nectar from many different flowers, but the cat have to live on milkweed. Scientists estimate the worldwide number of wild animals on Earth has halved in the past 40 years. Our unhealthy land practices have contributed to the decline of species, and the same practices that make our lands, those same practices make our lands uninhabitable to us. And what's the solution? The solution lies primarily with the attitudes of people and their relationship with nature. What can you do? The biggest thing you can do at home is to plant native. How wild can you go? That is a question everybody needs to ask themselves. You know, we're toeing the line. We want to be able to beautiful landscape, have the neighbors okay with it, not get the city mad at us, and also it's safe for wildlife. So here is our typical Midwest residence. This typical looking house that I could. Maybe looks a little bit nicer than my house. Maybe not as nice as yours, I'm not sure. And I landscaped it. I made this picture and then I put in a nice lawn and I put in some very typical landscape plants. We're going to go through our typical landscape plants. First off, the Bradford pear. People ask me this question all the time. Where could I get that beautiful white flowering tree? I just love it. Have to have one. That guy down the street has one. Well, the Bradford pear tree is a short-lived tree. It's non-native, and it's completely taking over native areas everywhere. And all you had to do last month, if you drive down I-50, you just see this thing. I've heard that it smells very bad. I'm not going to say what people say that it smells like because maybe some children are watching, but that's your Bradford pear. We need to stop planting that one. It's very, very invasive. Boxwood. So we have matching going on. We have some boxwood over here and some boxwood over here. You can pick them up at the big box store. And those are teeny tiny little meatballs that have to be pruned probably about 3 times a year to keep them in that little space. They actually grow about 4 feet tall. So if you must have the boxwood, please be aware of that. You're going to be pruning it like mad. There was 3 years ago when we got that really cold winter, and half of the boxwoods died. Well, of course, boxwoods are not native to this area, and they're not entirely hardy. At least some varieties aren't. As a landscaper, we had to go out and replace boxwoods everywhere. So I wouldn't plant that one anymore. Knockout roses. I don't know if I could say that. That's why I put KO roses. Anyways, the knockout roses are good. They kind of last a couple of years, but the thing is you know, they bloom all season, but everybody is planting them. I'm not exactly sure what the benefit is to pollinators. Sure, we'll use them for that blast of color. They're really good for that, but again, they're not native. We could be planting something else. Lilacs, we got to have that Miss Kib lilacs. As you're walking up this path, going through the door, it's so nice at this time of the year. And I'm not going to knock it because I love the smell of lilacs. And it is nice to just have something very fragrant, fragrant somewhere. But there's fragrant native plants too. Then of course you have your hostas and your daylilies because there's that's your typical perennial for shade. That's your typical perennial for sun. They look good for a long time, and again, they're not native. And then you have this big purple Norway maple. So clearly that's not from here, that's from probably Norway. And it's bright purple and it makes a lot of shade. But I don't think it's any host to any caterpillars from around here. And then most importantly, we have the big green lawn with weed-free beds. Now, what do you have to do to get that big green lawn? Well, in April, you got your step. You got some fertilizer plus crabgrass preventer. Then you go into May. Then you got your, so next month you got to fertilize again because it probably rained so much it all washed through, and then you got to spread some more. Yeah, then you got to do your grub X, which kills not anything that was small and alive in that soil. It's gonna kill it. Watch out for if you're putting this down, you're probably not getting too many fireflies. You're probably killing your fireflies. Then September, you do it again, more weeds and feeds, and then October, you got to get the last weed and feed in before winter. Which really, that's a crazy amount of fertilizer. I know there's a statistics out there too about how much fertilizer is used on lawns, and it's a lot. And a lot of it, it just ends up washing out of the soil, going into the drain on the street, ending up in the Gulf of Mexico where they get an algae bloom from that, and that kills fish. Then you got to mow a couple of times a week. You're lucky. If you don't water and fertilize your lawn, you're not going to be mowing that much. Actually, we have a little bit of lawn. We probably only mow it, I don't know, 4 or 5 times a year. If you could believe that. If you're not watering and fertilizing it, it doesn't grow. Then shake and feed. Oh, well, how do people have all those big perennial beds? They add a chemical first thing in spring to make sure no weeds come up. Then you got to weed whack all the edges. Boy, that's a lot of work. And then of course your glyphosate coming out and finding that causes cancer. Boy, we're all in trouble. So let's start over. Here's a new blank slate. What are we going to plant? So we got the basic bones of our landscape. Instead of a flowering pear, we can plant a redbud tree, which is all over the forests and looks great. A bayberry, which is a native shrub. You see it kind of closer to the shore, the lake shore. Tall switchgrass. I believe that this is a variety of switchgrass, but this is switchgrass that I still like to use it. So I think at the other slide I had some arborvitaes, which again would get way too big for the site. So this switchgrass provides a nice vertical accent. New Jersey tea is a short bush. These are great, guys. I hope somebody's taking notes because they don't get very tall. This is something that you could plant in place of like a spirea or a boxwood. An aronia, probably in place of like a burning bush. So an aronia, really the black aronia berry bush, or the red one has this beautiful red fall color. Both of them have this beautiful fall color. Just as pretty as a burning bush. And then for the parkway, hackberry, which is a great tree for a hackberry, and I believe it's a host to a swallowtail butterfly. Lays their eggs on that, and it feeds on the tree. A lot of trees actually are native trees are host to butterfly larvae. And then in the background, we need to start planting oak trees. So this area has a lot of native oak trees. And too, if people want to save their trees, they putting up a giant house like this in an area where an oak tree is, and then the oak tree ends up declining and dying. So we need to start planting more. You could just even pick up little 1-gallon oak trees and start planting those in the back, and by the time you're old, you'll be looking out into a beautiful forest. Then we're getting into some other basics for landscape that I like to plant. I have a backdrop of tall baptisia. So that's going to bloom in May. Now, with the previous slide, the previous landscape, they had like a wall right over here. We're not going to do a wall. We're going to do some outcropping stone, which is kind of mined sometimes, and that's not really cool. So if you'd go check out on Craigslist, you might be able to pick up some boulders. I like using them because they give a very natural feel, and they also they don't die. So it's a great way to put something in there that gives a 4th season of interest. Then we just fill in with summer butterfly favorites. We have got milkweed. If you put it in the right place, it fits right in with your landscape. Some lead plant. Now, a lead plant, I will use that in place of a butterfly bush, which is a native of China. The butterflies still like those butterfly bushes, but this lead plant is the original. This is the one that butterflies really love, and it has a very similar color, so that's this one right here. Liatris, again, butterflies just love. These are the big spiky ones that you see, and I like to use those just in a big swoop. So again, just like how plants grow in nature, we have got big clumps of things and big swoops. And not everything is going to be blooming at the same time, but Guide Susan will bloom most of the summer. That's why I like to use big swoops of them as well. Weed, again, the butterfly weed and the milkweed. The butterfly weed is a type of milkweed, and the butterflies enjoy that one as well. Oops. Then a little something for fall. We have some asters, some smooth Solomon seal for the shade. Perception. What is a weed? A weed is a plant out of place. I would imagine that a human's perception of a weed and nature's perception of a weed would be very different, and it's up to you to share with your friends and neighbors how you really feel about them so that they don't think you're the Joneses and they're trying to keep up with you. Does our native landscape fulfill our requirements? So this is our native landscape. Oh, I'm sorry. The very last thing is enjoy the lawn flowers. Unless you spray tons of chemicals on this lawn, you're never going to get rid of the dandelions. So just live with them. That's what we're saying. Does it fulfill the requirements? It complements the architecture of the house. It has balance of repetition, functionality, beauty, 4 season of interest, low maintenance. It is low maintenance, guys. After that first year of weeding, the stuff starts to grow in together. And if not, I don't really see much wrong with using a weed cloth. And you can take that out in time if you need to. It probably costs a lot of money. Using appropriate plants, they will not die. They are indigenous to this area. They're used to the heavy clay soil. Planting what you like. Well, I like what nature likes. It has that curb appeal. Man, if you go side by side, this one I think looks a lot better. What will the neighbors think? They're gonna love it. So harmony and habitats, you're gonna get so many butterflies. It's safe. So success. We'll talk a little bit about maintenance here. 6 steps for a healthier yard. Reduce the size of your lawn. Turf grass has very few benefits to the ecosystem compared to other plants. Reduce the size of the lawn and plant native plants. Don't use synthetic fertilizers. The excess nitrogen and phosphorus causes algae blooms when it gets into the waterways. I think I mentioned that a few times, so I'll move on. Don't use sides. So avoid the use of pesticides and herbicides because they have unintended negative consequences. Just because a pest or weed is present doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem. A natural solution, find a natural solution that doesn't harm other creatures. Use less gas-powered mowers. You can find electric machines. They've become very popular lately. Or you could use a reel mower. Mow high. That's just a good tip. But it actually doesn't stress your lawn as much, and it grows slower if you mow high. And that's the opposite of what most people think. They're like, oh, it's growing too fast, I'll mow it really short. Save grass clippings and leaves if you are catching the grass. And at the end of the year, when you have leaves, you want to get those onto your landscape beds. It's free mulch. So that breaks down into compost pretty easily, and it provides shelter for bees and other overwintering pollinators. So you could chop up the leaves, rake them into the beds, and not have to buy so much mulch. So that's great. And this is my card. So the day of the lawn is gone. Now is the time for the anti-landscape, anti-establishment. And here's my information. So you could give me a call. You could give me you could email me, find me on Facebook. I'd love more likes on there. And check out my website, www.airyprairie.com. I'm going to switch back. I haven't heard anything. I'm hoping that everybody is still watching. Can we switch back to, there I am. So I don't know, is that a lot of information, everybody? Is there any questions? Did we get some questions?
That was fantastic. Yes. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, everyone. There's a little bit of delay on chat. Okay, here we go. Is there a grass species you would recommend for the small stretch of lawn that wouldn't be invasive?
It depends on full sun or part shade. It is a very popular thing nowadays. There's a lot of different carex grasses that you can use. One that gets a lot lately, but it does like part shade, is pen carex grass or Pennsylvania sedge. Gets used a lot, and it kind of grows in together. You don't mow it. It has very natural prairie-like look. Then, like in my drawing, I use prairie dropseed, which has, it's it doesn't at all look like a lawn. But there's other varieties of carex grasses. I think like a fox sedge would probably work in the sun. Yeah, but there's definitely buffalo grass, and it's funny to mention buffalo grass because weeds will grow through it, and even Kentucky bluegrass, which is not native of Kentucky at all. It's actually native to China. Both of them kind of die out. They kind of melt out in the middle of summer if you're not giving them a lot of water. So buffalo grass is a good alternative, but just like Kentucky bluegrass, it's not foolproof. It's not like plant this, you're never going to see weeds again. You just kind of, you're planting hoping to plant a monoculture. And when it comes to native terms like that, it doesn't really happen. You're going to get a couple of weeds through there still. So any other questions?
Let's see.
Oh, I really enjoyed hearing. Well, thank you very much, Peggy. Well, it was super fun talking fertilizer problem with ultimate. Is there any activist work? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, and I really do think that this is what I'm doing. I really think that the big change had come from homeowners, because that's one of the main people that are causing this problem, and their attitudes. So I would love to ask all of you to share your views or investigate it and tell people what you think.
Perfect. Well, native plants are simply a win-win. So thank you so much, Heather, for joining us today. We loved seeing how you were landscaping that home, what you advised, and thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Up next, we will learn some tips from the Anderson Humane Wildlife Center about baby bunnies. And for those of you who are tuning in now for the raffle, it is just around the corner, so bear with us. We have 2 more videos and we will be doing our drawing.
Hi everyone, my name is Molly Craig and I am the Wildlife Care Manager at the Anderson Humane Wildlife Center. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about baby bunnies. Our baby rabbits are born right around between March and September, and usually there's about 5 or 6 babies per litter. Now these babies are independent at about 15 to 20 days old, so if their eyes are open, their ears are up, and they're about the size of a softball, they are totally fine to be on their own and they don't need a human's help unless they appear to be injured. Now, if you find a nest and you're not sure if it is abandoned or not, there's a couple ways that you can check. You can use some string or thin twigs and put it in a tic-tac-toe pattern over top of the nest. It helps as well to take a picture of it so you know what you're looking at and you know the next day to see if it has been disturbed. And you can leave them overnight. The mom only visits the nest at about dawn and dusk each day to care for her young, and otherwise keeps them totally alone. Now, if you are concerned about having dogs in that area, there are a couple solutions. If you're not able to keep your dog on a leash during that 15 to 20 day period, what you can do is put a laundry basket over top of the nest. That provides protection while still allowing for a little bit of airflow. You can weigh it down with bricks or rocks or something along those lines if you've got a little bit of a digger. And otherwise, you can just keep it covered during the day and make sure that it is uncovered during dawn and dusk when that mom is coming to feed her babies. Now, we never want to really interfere with the natural cycle, so if you can avoid interrupting any predator-prey interactions, that really is best. I know it can sometimes be a little difficult to watch, especially when it's in your yard, but it is certainly part of nature. If the babies appear to be unhealthy, if they're covered in bugs, usually the mom is going to be grooming these off of them. And usually if they have been not cared for in a little while, they might have slightly sunken in stomachs. They might appear to have wrinkly skin and be dehydrated. If you're seeing those signs, it may be best to bring them into a wildlife rehabilitator. Always go ahead and call us first. That way we can walk you through the situation and make absolutely certain that these babies are in need of human care. Their best chance for survival is always going to be with their natural mother, so we do want to keep them in that situation if at all possible.
Between Rita's chickens and these bunnies, I think I've had my daily dose of cuteness. Switching over from bunnies to birds, up next we have a word from Will County Audubon.
Hi, my name is Greg Dubois. I'm the Vice President and Program Director of Will County Audubon. Thanks for stopping by our booth today. I have an interesting subject to share with you, but before I get to that, I would like to tell you a little bit more about Will County Audubon. We're a chapter of the Illinois Audubon Society, and our organization is dedicated to preserving native plants and wildlife and their habitats. Our members provide many volunteer duties to other organizations in our area, and they include interpretive guiding, ecological monitoring, and other environmental activities. We hold monthly meetings and programs, and the subject of our April 2021 program is one that I want to expand on a bit with you today. The title of that program was Coffee Economics, Environment, and Migratory Birds. And this was specifically about bird-friendly coffee. Now you might ask, what is bird-friendly coffee? Well, coffee plants originated in the forests of the East African country of Ethiopia. Coffee is now grown throughout the world, and until recent decades was traditionally grown in shade. But in order to produce more product and more profit, now 3/4 of the world's coffee is grown in full sun, and forest habitat has to be cut to provide that full sun environment. In addition to destroying wildlife habitat, these full sun coffee farms often use harmful pesticides and fertilizers that we know can do damage to the environment. Now, when forests disappear, migratory songbirds are going to disappear as well. And in order to combat population and habitat loss, the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center scientists created the bird-friendly certification for environmentally responsible coffee. In fact, we think of our migratory birds here in the US as birds that fly south for the winter, but then come back to us. Well, in reality, our migratory birds spend more of their time in Central and South America than they do in their breeding range here in North America. That is why their habitat south of the border is so important. For more detailed discussion on bird-friendly coffee, I urge you to go to this website and listen to a podcast of a discussion with Dr. Ruth Bennett, who's an avian ecologist with the Smithsonian Migratory Bird Center. If your coffee package does not bear this bird-friendly logo, then it's not bird-friendly coffee. Coffee meeting this certification is not only grown on farms meeting criteria for good bird habitat, but it's also USDA organic. You may not find your bird-friendly coffee in your grocery store, but I can help you with that. If you go to drinkbirdfriendly.com, you will find a great list of retailers who, many of which are actually roasters, who sell bird-friendly coffees from various parts of the world. And the following roasters and retailers have generously supported Will County Audubon's festival booths this May, and they provided coupon codes. So Dean's Beans, Birds and Beans, Cafe Ibis, and Chesapeake Bay Roasting Company. Thank you for stopping by, and we would love to have you join us for a program or field trip when our summer break ends in September.
Wow, I think I've learned something new with every talk today. As you noticed in the video, Greg included some coupons for coffee. This live stream will be available after the show for you to view again should you need to find those coupons, rewatch videos, etc. And we will be posting all a word from vendor videos separately on Bluestem's YouTube page and Facebook. So stay tuned for those. We will be uploading those today as well. This way you can watch them separately or share with your friends. Now, drum roll please, what you've all been waiting for, our Bluestem Earth Festival raffle. I am joined by Jessica Peak. She is our Bluestem Earth Festival raffle coordinator this year in partnership with Sister Sharon Frederick, and she's also a committee member. So a quick breakdown of how this will go. We will be reading off the item name as well as the item description, followed by the drawing of our winner. Hi, Jess.
Hello, thank you. Before I get to the drawing, just want to thank everyone who supported our raffle by purchasing tickets. And for all of those who are winners, even if you aren't joining us right now, we'll be sending an email out to everyone who won as well as with giving. Each prize has its own, whether we'll be emailing it to you, mailing it to you, or arranging for pickup. So we'll give all the explanation in the email. So without further ado, our first prize is assorted gift cards from Mariano's, Starbucks, and a Visa gift card. And the winner of this raffle is Elaine Kirscher. So congratulations, Elaine. Our second prize are some bird houses made by Pat Yeager. And these are great for wrens, house sparrows, finches, chickadees, and other small-sized birds that you can have in your front yard to have them come and have a nice, colorful place to rest. The winner of this prize is Kristen Boswell. Congratulations, Kristen. Next up is the Bronkberry Farms gift basket, which includes blackberry cobbler, strawberry rhubarb jam, sweet potato butter, apple salsa, and a turtle garn ornament. And the winner of this gift basket is Jason Christ. Congrats, Jason. Next, the Conservation Foundation Rain Barrel, which are large containers that capture stormwater from your roof that you would otherwise be lost as rainwater. You can use this water to water your gardens, hopefully when you plant your butterfly garden and stuff like that. You'll be able to use the water that you collect from the rain barrel to water your garden. And the winner of this rain barrel is Tina Walker. Next up, we have the Drover's Trail gift certificate and product basket, $25 gift certificate that you can use on the farm or at the farmers markets anytime that Drover Trails is there. When redeeming the gift certificate, you also receive a jar of sauerkraut, a bottle of kombucha, a pound of ground beef, a bag of fresh lettuce, and a dozen eggs. So lots of fresh goods for you. The winner of this gift is Therese M. Griffin. Congrats, Therese. Next, we have the Nativity House Community Garden partial share, which is a weekly share in the fresh, local grown produce and honey throughout the 2021 growing season from the Nativity House in Lockport. This is a cool community working membership where members also work 1 day a week and build community in the local area. The winner of this basket or this gift is Christine Harvey. Congrats, Christine. Next up, we have the Prairie Moon Nursery Plant Collection, where you can jumpstart your butterfly garden that we talked so much about today with a collection of classic flowering perennials. So you'll receive a 3-pack of each variety listed. We have downy woodmint, butterfly weed, lance leaf coropus, showy sunflower, and purple coneflower. The winner of this collection is Pamela Travis. Congrats, Pamela. Next, we have the spice set from Santa Cruz Chili and Spice Company, which also includes a recipe book and dream catcher. And the winner of this spice set is also Pamela Travis. Thank you for entering so many times for so many of these gifts. The Spring Beauty Wildflower photograph by Lisa Scarcelli is a 11 by 14 inch print with a one-of-a-kind vintage raised embossed vine design frame. The winner of this photograph is Joanna Landor. Congratulations, Joanna. All right, 2 more left. We have the Forge Lamont Quarries pedal boat rental, where you can enjoy some time out in the water at the Forge Quarry in Lamont. It's a gift certificate redeemable for 1 ride of up to 4 people on a pedal boat at their quarry lake there. And the winner of this prize is Celeste Turk. Congratulations, Celeste. And lastly, we have the Wild Blossom Meadery and Winery Tour and Tasting, winning a private tour and tasting for 2 at the Wild Blossom Meadery and Winery in Chicago. And the winner of this is Barbara Kwiatkowski. Sorry if I'm saying that name wrong, but congratulations, Barbara. And congratulations to all of our prize winners. Thanks so much for participating and supporting Bluestem Earth Festival.
Congratulations, everyone. Thanks so much, Jess, for the raffle update. So as she said, we will be reaching out to all the winners if you are not watching the live stream with us, so you know where you can pick up your prize, if it will be emailed to you, etc. We will be in touch. Thanks again, Jess.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that's all the show we have for you today. If you haven't already, feel free to join our Bluestem Earth Festival virtual market group that's on Facebook. You can find it under groups listed on our Bluestem Earth Festival page. Bluestem vendors will be posting information and products for sale, as well as links to their website in there today. Just a few have already posted that you'll run into. Hopefully they'll be continuing posting throughout today. Thank you so much for watching this year's Bluestem Earth Festival virtual program presented by the Joliet Franciscan Sisters and Associates. Please save the date for next year's in-person, yes, I'm saying it, in-person festival, Saturday, May 21st, 2022. And lastly, a special shout out to all of those who helped put this event together. Individually, we are one drop. Together, we are one ocean. Thanks so much. See you next year.